That was Assignment from Romania. I'm Tessa Dunlop, and the producer was John Murphy.
That was Assignment from the BBC. I'm Saroja Coelho, and this is CBC Radio 1. Have a great day.
Good morning, Manitoba, and hello, Winnipeg. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is Information Radio, and you're on CBC, 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and YouTube. And for your Thursday, I can tell you that we're not waking up to as wet as we had yesterday in the city of Winnipeg. It is clear. It is 2 degrees. It's going to be sunny today and a high of 15. Over in Brandon, you're going to get 13 and sunshine, and up in Thompson, just some flurries and some sun and cloud. You could see a chance of rain showers late this afternoon as well, but your high is going to be right around 9 degrees. So that sets up the day in parts of Manitoba. The morning show's on until 8:37 a.m. If you have a problem on the commute, 788-3093. Corey Funk will pick it up. Corey also directs the show. Good morning, Corey. And Corey, I helped to produce today's show as well. Good morning to Abby Hadiyemi, who's behind the controls this morning. And good morning to Brad Lillies, who is our YouTube producer, and wave and hello if you watch the show there. Let's get to Heather Wells. She's here with our morning headlines at 3 minutes to 6.
Good morning. Well, Elections Canada wants to make sure everyone gets their say on Election Day, now nearing just 4 days away. And Elections Canada is turning its focus to the unhoused. It's been visiting drop-in shelters, giving confirmation letters to the staff so they can prove the identity of people who use their services. People with no place to live do face a lot of barriers as they try to vote. NDP leader Jagmeet Singh is in Winnipeg today, hoping to shore up support in a traditional stronghold. The party retained its grip on Elmwood-Transcona 7 months ago when Leela Dance won a by-election there with just under 1,200 votes. And Liberal leader Mark Carney will also be in Winnipeg later today. I'll be back with more Manitoba news at 6:30.
All right, thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Well, today we've got a bit of a special show. The last few weeks we've been on location, the last 3 weeks in different ridings in the city of Winnipeg. Today, 4 days with the election to go, and we're going to take you in 4 directions, all in rural parts of Manitoba. So we're going to go all over Manitoba today to hear what voters have to say, kind of a 360 view as we near closer to Election Day. Some of the voters we'll hear from are people that we met along the way as CBC visited these communities in Communities in Focus, part of our initiative to report and to get out into rural areas and listen. And some are just people we know, or some of you who reached out to the show and said, I'll tell you how I'm voting and why, or I'm undecided and here's why. So we're going to hear from a whole lot of Manitobans as we inch closer to Election Day about what you care about. Stay with us. World Report is next.
On Cue with Tom Power.
Who do you not notice? In the new season of his show Late Bloomer, Jasmeet Reina wants to shed light on stories that haven't been told, including the lives of food delivery drivers on bikes. He'll be here to tell you about the new season and what happens when we start paying attention.
I'm just really scared.
What do you mean? Scared about what?
Everything.
That's coming up on Cue, followed by Commotion with Elamine Abdel Mahmoud on CBC Radio 1, the CBC Listen app, and everywhere you get your podcasts.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. U.S. President Donald Trump is reinserting himself into Canadian politics.
I have to be honest. As a state, it works great. As a nation, 95% of Canada, what they do is they buy from us and they sell to us. If they didn't have us, and if we didn't spend that money, as Trudeau told me, they would cease to exist.
Last night in the White House, Trump hinted to reporters he was considering raising auto tariffs in Canada once again. It is making waves on the campaign trail, including in Surrey, BC. Liberal leader Mark Carney is telling voters he is the best leader to stand up to Trump. The CBC's Tom Perry was at the rally last night.
Who is ready? Who is ready to stand up for Canada with me?
Mark Carney in Surrey, BC, on a day when Donald Trump barged back into Canadian politics. The U.S. president repeating his false claims about the U.S. subsidizing its northern neighbor and his wish that Canada become America's 51st state.
As he made clear once again today in the Oval Office, President Trump, he is trying to break us so that America can own us.
Trump had, for the most part, gone quiet on Canada, but his latest meanderings could fuel the Liberals in the final days of this election. Carney is in BC, looking to win ridings held by Conservatives and New Democrats. But his attacks have focused exclusively on Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre, who Carney says is the wrong person to take on the U.S. president.
It's not Pierre Poilievre. No. It's not Pierre Poilievre who draws his inspiration from President Trump, who copies his ideas.
A U.S. president known for sowing chaos, injecting another dose of disruption into this campaign. Tom Perry, CBC News, Surrey, BC.
Trump made his latest comments about Canada about 1 hour before Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre held his rally in Trenton, Nova Scotia. It's not clear if the crowd was aware of what the U.S. president said, but there was a moment of surging patriotism.
To be safe. We will never be the 51st state. You're right about that. Absolutely right. We will be Canada. Canada first, Canada always, Canada forever.
We are expecting Poilievre to hold a news conference in Halifax in just a few hours. And this evening, he's holding a rally in Saskatoon. NDP leader Jagmeet Singh is starting his day in Winnipeg. He spoke to reporters shortly after Trump publicly mused about new auto tariffs.
These tariffs will make it impossible, I think, for a lot of these companies to continue. It is a devastating blow to have increased tariffs on our automobile sector. And that's why I think what we need to do is to say, if you want to have access to our market, you need to have a presence in our country. That means jobs in our country.
We're also watching Montreal this morning. Bloc leader Yves-François Blanchet will speak to reporters at the Bombardier office there. Montreal is also where Green Party co-leader Jonathan Pedneau is campaigning today. President Donald Trump's campaign to deport millions of undocumented migrants is raising questions about Canada's safe third country agreement with the United States. Under the agreement, Canada can reject almost all asylum claims from people coming from the U.S. But as the CBC's Jorge Barrera found out, one family's ordeal is calling into question whether the U.S. really is a safe country for immigrants.
Araceli says she and her husband would wait to cry until their daughters fell asleep. She says the girls are 4 and 14 years old and gave them the strength to get through the 2 weeks they spent locked inside a windowless jail cell in late March at the U.S. port of entry in Niagara Falls, New York. CBC News is identifying Araceli by first name only for her safety. Araceli, who has 2 brothers living in Canada, and her family were trying to flee the Trump administration's crackdown on undocumented immigrants. But they were turned back at the Canadian border over small naming differences in her and her brother's birth certificates. And they're not alone, says this advocate.
In one case, a group of 40. In another case, a group of 80 reportedly.
Jennifer Connor is with the Buffalo, New York group Justice for Migrant Families. She says others have also been held for days and weeks inside ports of entry in Detroit, Buffalo, and Champlain, New York, something that never happened before along the northern border.
I don't think it's something that Canada should be complicit in.
Heather Neufeld, an Ottawa lawyer, has filed a federal court appeal to overturn Canada Border Services Agency's rejection of Araceli's claim.
Having a brother who is a Canadian citizen, Araceli qualifies to seek asylum in Canada.
Araceli's husband is now in a U.S. detention center, awaiting a May hearing on his fate, while she and her daughters remain free in Buffalo, with a hearing date set in December. Living with fear, she could be scooped up and deported to El Salvador at any moment. Jorge Barrera, CBC News, Buffalo, New York.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is cutting short his official trip to South Africa following a Russian attack on Kyiv. At least 9 people were killed in the overnight assault. Dozens more are injured or missing. Crystal Gomensing has the latest.
Loud explosions and fireballs in Kyiv. Ukrainian military units intercepted many incoming drones and missile strikes overnight, but not all of them. There was a quick and sudden explosion and the ceiling started to come down, says Natalia Erostova. President Volodymyr Zelensky says Russia hit Ukraine with nearly 70 missiles and roughly 150 drones. Hours earlier, U.S. President Donald Trump told reporters in the Oval Office Russia is ready to make a deal and called out the Ukrainian leader.
I thought it might be easier to deal with Zelensky. So far, it's been harder.
Russia accuses Zelensky of standing in the way of diplomacy. According to the Kremlin's foreign ministry spokesperson, Zelensky lacks capacity to negotiate a deal to end the war. Ukraine refuses to concede illegally annexed territory to Moscow.
There's been a lot of talking between Trump's envoy and the Russians.
Fiona Hill was an advisor to President Trump during his first administration and says the Russian president knows how to play Trump.
Unfortunately, an awful lot of people know how to play Trump. People can play to his vanity. They can, exploit his desires, for success.
Zelensky, who is currently in South Africa gathering support for his peace plan, says he'll return home immediately and is calling for more air defense support from allies. Crystal Gamansing, CBC News, London.
India's Prime Minister is vowing revenge on those who carried out Tuesday's attack in Kashmir. Narendra Modi says they will be punished, quote, beyond their imagination.
India will identify, track and punish every terrorist. We will pursue them to the ends of the earth. India's spirit will never be broken by terrorism.
The attack killed 26 tourists. Pakistan is denying any involvement, but India has closed its main border with that country. It has also expelled some of Pakistan's military diplomats and suspended a water-sharing treaty. Pakistan says any attempt to stop the flow of water will be considered an act of war. Islamabad is also suspending all trade with India. Cardinals at the Vatican are preparing for the upcoming conclave. They prayed this morning ahead of a series of meetings. There is a lot of work to be done before a new pope is selected. And in St. Peter's Square, there are thousands of people who still want to say a final farewell to Pope Francis. So many people lined up yesterday, the Vatican kept the doors to the Basilica open all night. It was planning to close them at midnight. Megan Williams has the latest.
The doors to St. Peter's Basilica reopened this morning to welcome thousands of mourners paying final respects to Pope Francis. Some 50,000 people have passed by his open coffin since Wednesday morning, when it was carried in a procession from his guest house inside the Vatican to the Basilica.
I'm here because it's a historical moment in time, and I want to be part of this, and it means a lot to me to be here.
Says this Torontonian who now lives in Rome. Because of the high numbers, the Vatican decided to keep St. Peter's open through the night. Francis's coffin will be closed in a ceremony Friday evening. On Saturday, more than 170 delegates, including world leaders, are expected to attend the funeral in St. Peter's Square, with millions watching around the globe. Megan Williams, CBC News, the Vatican.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. I'm Marcia Young.
Good morning, Manitoba. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is Information Radio. We're live on CBC in downtown Winnipeg. You're on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and YouTube. We're going to hit 15 degrees today. Lots of nice sunshine and should be pretty lovely in the city of Winnipeg. I'll have more on your weather in a moment. This show is a special one for us because we're calling it our 360 Degrees Show. 4 days to go before the election, and we're going to take you in 4 directions in Manitoba to hear from voters where they live about what they care about. So we're going north, south, east, and west. And this hour on the show, we're heading east first, where gun rights and conservation are top of mind for a hunter who lives near Lac du Bonnet. He's going to share with us what he's thinking ahead of Monday. And then we're going west right before 7 o'clock. Another voter who calls himself a progressive conservative, but he is worried that the federal Conservatives are leaning toward what he calls the Reform Party stance of the 90s. So he says at his core he's conservative, but he's undecided heading into Monday. So we'll hear more about what he has to say as we take you over to Strathclair, Manitoba. So we'll visit both those communities virtually this hour. In addition, we have somewhat of a troubling interview about teen boys and self-image in the age of social media. We're going to dig into a trend called looks maxing. and the impact that it is having on some young men and boys. So stay tuned. That's this half hour as well. Heather Wells is here with our headlines this Thursday. What's up?
Well, a housing expert says the conversation on housing in this federal election must include social housing. Shauna McKinnon is chair of the Urban and Inner City Studies Department at the University of Winnipeg. She says details on social housing in the major party platforms have been missing. So we'll hear from her. Also, a provincial pot of money set aside to subsidize flights from Winnipeg to 2 U.S. cities has run out of cash. The former PC government created a nearly $5 million fund to get WestJet flights from Richardson International to Los Angeles and Atlanta. Those were direct flights. The Canoe government says that money has been used up and it has no plans to set aside any more. We'll hear more on those stories and others coming up at 6:30.
All right, thanks, Heather.
You're welcome.
Winnipeg, 1 degree right now and mainly clear. In the forecast, sunshine and a high of 15. In Thompson right now, it's mostly cloudy. It's -3. In Brandon, right now it is clear and it's -2. And you know what? I was looking for Lac du Bonnet for my first guest, and it's not on my list, Corey. Environment Canada doesn't put Lac du Bonnet on the list. So I'm going to Google Lac du Bonnet's temp while you're doing the traffic.
Okay. Well, I can tell you if you're driving to Lac du Bonnet, you're really anywhere else in the province, those highways are looking lovely this morning. Haven't seen, looks like Manitoba 501, things are clear. Here in the city, haven't heard of any major issues either. But if you do see something going on, if you're walking, biking, driving, give me a call on the CBC commuter line, 204-788-3093, Marcy.
Lac du Bonnet, you're 0 right now. So we do begin our political tour around the province, about 22 kilometers east of Lac du Bonnet, more correctly here. That is where Stéphane Bouderlic lives. He's a 66-year-old safety educator and avid hunter, and he's also the events education coordinator for the Lac du Bonnet Wildlife Association. Now, he lives in the far eastern edge of the massive riding of Selkirk-Interlake Eastman. The incumbent is Conservative MP James Bazan. He's been in for many years. He's represented the riding, in fact, since 2004. There are 5 other candidates from all the major parties all running in this riding. And I'm grateful Stéphane's up early because I understand you're training for a triathlon.
Yeah, I'm training for triathlon and also going to the Worlds in Spain in June. So we've got a lot of training to get done.
That's amazing. So the Worlds of Triathlon, just overall for anybody, any age group?
No, you had to qualify, and for my age group, I'm 66 to 69. So, yeah, we're doing that in June, and it should be very exciting.
Amazing, amazing. Well, we're glad you're here. I know you're not here to talk about fitness, but the election. What are the big issues that matter to you heading into Monday?
So I guess the biggest thing for me would be security and safety, and also for environment, which goes hand in hand with, the gun things that are going on with the government, because I see them slowly being eroded away. For myself, for having firearms, it's for hunting, for food and sustenance, and also for sport, because I'm a trap shooter, and so I enjoy going out every week to go and shoot trap.
What do you mean slowly being eroded away? What have you not liked about what the Liberals have done with gun rights? Can you hear me? I think maybe the video is frozen. I think that's the challenge here. Okay. So you know what I think we're going to do? We're going to go to our next item because we actually talked to someone at 6 o'clock, and then we're going to get Stéphane back on the line. So that's what we're going to do. Our next item is an interview, and it's about what I mentioned. It's about looks maxing. I had never heard this term before, but a lot of people have. It's a trend. It's usually affecting teenage boys and young men. They post pictures of themselves online in a forum. They get critiques on their appearance from other users, and perhaps not surprisingly, it gets nasty pretty quickly. This is Michael Halpin, a professor of sociology at Dalhousie University, who was lead on a study about the trend.
Men who, to me, seem like perfectly average or like even handsome are absolutely obliterated in this community. So really small things like the ratio of upper lip to chin will get men rated like a 3 out of 10, for instance. And the scores that we saw were generally 5 or lower. And on top of that, after giving them all this information, they're also saying terrible things about them as well. So, your body is disgusting. No one will ever love you. You'll never get a job. You're going to be a failure unless you do some serious looks maxing practices.
For more on some of the concerns around looks maxing, I'm joined by Marc-Alexandre Ladouceur, Media Education Specialist at Media Smarts, a Canadian nonprofit media literacy organization. Good morning.
Good morning.
So tell us a bit more about looks maxing and where it first originated. Where did it come from?
Looks maxing is a young male audience targeted event that comes from, well, possibly at least links to these manospheres and incel communities, with the belief that one has to be made as attractive as possible in order to fit into that narrow view that women only find attractive. Now, targeting young men, it goes for specific bio or life hacks or DIY methods in affecting young men's appearance, such as finding ways to chew jawline gum to get a stronger jaw, the way that the eyes present, even in some cases increased uses in casual steroids.
What are some of the more concerning alterations boys and young men are encouraged to do to achieve these so-called, benchmarks?
So-called benchmarks, so well put. Well, those, I believe, now this jawline gum is a very concerning one. It was created by an orthodontist to try and help people grow. This, of course, orthodontist has been disbanded because of the practice, but it would actually create so much strain on the ligaments that there would be, a lifelong injury that would come from this. Casual use of steroids is another one. We're looking at bodies that are still developing and minds that are still developing. And in both cases, creating a link of either body or muscular dysphoria between the two because of this fundamental belief that is being taught to them. And this is leading, of course, to various forms of injury, both psychic and physical.
So who set these standards? Do we know where that originated?
It's always tricky to find, a single person in these events because the standards kind of grow with the community. These communities are, I've mentioned, incel and manospheres. So these communities of misogynistic content creators and men who believe that women, again, are only attracted towards a certain type of man. And this leads to a sort of extremism in the content. So while I can't say necessarily who created these expectations, they grew out of these areas where the expectation is so high that it's nearly unattainable to justify a certain existence within their content creation.
What is the impact of experience, the kind of criticism or scrutiny online that comes with this have on a man's mental health?
Goodness.
Or a boy's mental health?
Well, what a good distinction. So we knew already a lot of studies existed on body image and women or girls who were scrolling online and finding that after an hour of spending time on social media, they became more dissatisfied with their bodies. Now, a lot less research exists for young men and men on the subject, and we are finding now that it has a huge effect, the very similar effect, but of course these methods are equally radical as some that existed for young women. So what is happening is not only are they getting radicalized on how they want to appear, but they're falling into more and more radical content from these content creators. And as studies have shown us, the most likely reason one will believe radical content in any given situation is already believing something from those spheres. So it becomes sort of a bridge to various forms of radicalized content online.
So it can take you down a rabbit hole.
So well put, yeah.
Yeah. How would you know if your kid were doing this, or if someone in your life, were doing this? Are there signs? Are there things to look for?
There are always things to look for. And one thing I always like to mention is even before we see any of these signs, I laugh because it is very serious subject matter. But there's always an optimistic side of me who says, well, hey, we always knew that conversations about body image were important with youth. We know it now more than ever, and we can have this conversation no matter what is going on. I think that telling youth that what they see online is fabricated, the end of a long line of modifications in order to present a certain ideal, is very important. Number two, if we are seeing signs like ongoing obsession with appearance, or feeling continuously dissatisfied with how one appears, start talking, and we will hear expressions that might come out of these spheres, such as, now I mentioned the jaws, the pouty lips, the hunter's eyes. All of these can be
Wait
indications.
a sec. What's the hunter's eyes?
These are smoky and slightly slanted eyes with makeup to appear a little bit more masculine, but I would say I'm trying to think of the
intimidating.
Intimidating. Here's one that everyone might know. When Jason Momoa wears the darker shadow.
Got it. Yep.
That's it. Okay.
Yeah. Understood.
And because these are seen again as
Aquaman for listeners.
Masculinity.
Yeah, Aquaman for listeners who are trying to visualize Jason Momoa. Although in that movie he wasn't maybe in that full makeup, but he often is for his characters. Yeah. Okay. So I interjected.
And again,
yeah.
No, that's perfect. But this is what we have. These are the images that are being projected. And that's the conversation that we can next have. After talking about how everything is fabricated, we know studies have shown that youth who are shown a variety of male body shapes will feel less concerned about their own bodies than if they are shown constant images of these actors who the superhero body, for example, that appear in so much, and tell them that this is what one needs in order to be made desirable. And that conversation can be had as well. That it is how media projects something, and that there are in fact all sorts of bodies, and that women are attracted to more than just a physical appearance, and that physical appearance doesn't tie into one particular ideal, but to many different types.
We need to talk to the men, we need to talk to the boys. Thank you very much, Mark, for raising this with us and telling us about the trend. Appreciate it.
I'm very happy to do it. Thank you.
Marc-Alexandre Ladouceur is a media education specialist at Media Smarts, a Canadian nonprofit media literacy organization. It is 6:24 a.m. Thanks for joining us here on CBC. We have a special show today. We're calling it our 360 show. We're getting all around the province talking to voters ahead of Monday now that we're close to the election. Well, let's return. We have returned to our voter in Lac du Bonny, or just outside Lac du Bonny. Stefan Boderlic, we have managed to reconnect with him. Sorry we lost you there.
Oh, that's okay. That's technology for us, I guess.
You know what?
That's the way it goes.
That's come up in every rural area when we were trying to connect to people and make plans yesterday. So that's one of the things that us, we in the city here probably take for granted, is that connectivity. We left off, you were talking about your concern around safety, and also I think you mentioned you're a hunter and you do skeet shooting as well, and also just have safety concerns around. So when you're thinking about the election issues, gun rights is a big one for you. Where have the Liberals let that down for you?
I think they're going too far in, restricting everybody on, accessing firearms for, hunting and for sports. It's just gone too far. And I mean, we can also extend that to the point of even hunting rights and angling rights. They are really, bringing those down as well. So we've seen a 75% moose tag reduction, in Manitoba. And, these things are slowly eroding away our rights as citizens out in the country to use them for stuff like that. Because, I mean, we have other things, like we have bears, wolves and stuff that can come onto our property that, that we have to protect ourselves from as well. Although, we don't want to always put them down. But the thing is, when it comes to that, if I call, the authorities to come and give me some help, it's going to take a while before they get here. So there's things like that. And having said that, we still need education in the fact of using firearms, and also the rules and regulations to obtain them as well. And they're pretty strict right now.
So when Carney at the debate says that he's not going to get in the way of hunters' rights, that the bans that the Liberals have put in around assault-style weapons and not weapons like someone may use, to hunt or on a rural property, you don't believe him, or you've seen the Liberals in the last 10 years slide their rights away despite what we hear him say?
I see them sliding the rights away because, even for sport shooters, there are some, we've got a small arms range at our shooting range. And even that, we see that being eroded away. And there is, competitions for small arms. And, so there's the side where we want to use them for sport. I see that slowly being eroded away. I think where we should really focus on is these arms that are coming in, across the border, and also getting into the hands of criminals. And we should be a little bit more tougher on that, because when you see stuff that happens in the news that's bad, it's mainly the criminals that have obtained these guns in an illegal way. So we've got to be able to have more education on protecting our arms and making sure we secure them.
I want to move us along here, not to run out of time, and get into your vote here. So you haven't voted yet. Do you know how you're voting this time?
Yeah, I will be voting for James Bazan for the Progressive Conservative Party. He has done very good for our area, and he knows the area. And I feel that he is the one that will be, being our voice. Now, I vote for the person that's going to work for me in my area. I don't vote for the person that, is his leader. So, because I do not see on the ballot where it says that I'm voting for Mr. Pierre Poilievre. I want to have my man be my voice.
Why make that distinction? Like, do you like Pierre Poilievre as a leader and to be the next Prime Minister of Canada, or have you always, does it have nothing to do with him this time around? You've always looked at your candidate?
Well, I always looked at my candidate. When I used to live in Winnipeg, I voted for Bill Blakey when I lived in Transcona, and he did a very good job, and that's NDP. And for me, I've never been that far left. But the thing is that, I'm out in the country where I need a little bit more voice on what I'm doing, and I don't think that the other candidates are going to be a voice for me. So I go for the person of the area here.
Our relationship with the United States has been one of the election issues. There are many, but it has, a lot of people are saying it's been a ballot box issue for them. I understand for you, not so much. Is that right?
No, not so much, because it's pretty hard to negotiate with a person that is not thinking straight, or even I guess I'm trying to use this a little bit more diplomacy here when I'm talking about their government, but I do not believe that we can negotiate with them. I think that we've got to be put on the level of offense. In other words, this is what we've got to do. We've been too lazy in the past and not going to other places to sell our goods. Yes, the states are easy and they're a big market, but there's a big world out there that we can actually send our goods to, albeit it might cost a little bit more money.
Thank you so much, Stefan, for being up early with us and telling us about what you're thinking heading into casting your ballot on Monday for, as you said, your local candidate up there for the Conservatives. Appreciate having you on CBC.
Thank you very much, Marcy. You have a good day.
Yeah, you too. Good luck at the triathlon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. That's Stefan Bourdelik, in case you missed the beginning of when we were first connecting with him. He's training for a triathlon right now. He lives just east of Lac du Bonnet. He's in the riding of Selkirk, Interlake, Eastman. The Selkirk, Interlake, Eastman incumbent is Conservative James Bazan. Joseph Estabrooks running for the NDP. Byron Greiber for the PPC. Wayne James for the Greens. Rhonda Nickel for the Liberals. And Chris Riddell for the United Party of Canada. We're going to take you west in the next half hour to talk to another voter, but it's time for your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 6:31, it is 1 degree. We start you off with some sunshine. A few clouds roll in this afternoon, and we warm up to 15. Manitobans across the province say they are focused on housing in this federal election. CBC's Rosanna Hempel brings us one man's fight for home ownership.
Very frustrating.
Jared Heinrich says after budgeting for groceries and rent, he barely has anything left for a down payment.
When rent is as much or if not more than a mortgage payment, it makes it very hard for a young couple like me and my wife Laura to save up to buy a house.
This 25-year-old tradesman in Winkler hopes the next government makes first-time home ownership more achievable. The Conservatives say they'd cut GST on new homes. The Liberals say they'd also eliminate GST for first-time home buyers, while the NDP say they'd require the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation to offer low-interest, public-backed mortgages. Heinrich says he'd welcome a GST cut on his first home, but he says more help is needed from Canada's next leader.
Please just remember us bottom-of-the-barrel Canadians that are just great getting by, and just please make it affordable for us to live again, because it's not.
Rosanna Hempel, CBC News, Winkler.
Elections Canada wants to make sure everyone can have their say on Election Day. That includes the unhoused. People with no place to live face many barriers when they try to vote, like transportation, access to parties' platforms, and a lack of identification. Margot Ross at Siloam Mission says Elections Canada gave them confirmation letters so staff can prove the identity of people who use their services, allowing them to vote.
Our housing prevention workers work really hard as a first step to get identification for folks, but some just don't have it. So this letter makes a huge difference in giving folks the opportunity to go out and cast a ballot.
Ross says helping them participate in the electoral process gives them a sense of pride. With only 4 days to go until the federal election campaign wraps up, NDP leader Jagmeet Singh is back in Winnipeg, hoping to shore up support in a traditional stronghold. Singh addressed party faithful at a rally in Elmwood, Transcona last night, talking up the accomplishments of his small team of 25 MPs since the last election in 2021. Singh says now is no time for cuts to health care and other programs promised by the Conservatives and Liberals.
Canadians know, people on the prairie know, we get through a difficult time by looking out for one another, by lifting each other up, by taking care of one another. That's what we do.
Singh is scheduled to make an announcement this morning with Elmwood Transcona candidate Leela Dance. She won the riding by just under 1,200 votes in a by-election 7 months ago. Liberal leader Mark Carney is also in Winnipeg later today. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre is in Halifax this morning before flying to Saskatoon. U.S. President Donald Trump is threatening to increase tariffs on Canada once again. Trump making the comment last night at the White House.
I really don't want cars from Canada. So when I put tariffs on Canada, they're paying 25%, but that could go up in terms of cars. When we put tariffs on, all we're doing is we're saying we don't want your cars in all due respect. We want really to make our own cars, which is what we're doing in record numbers now. You know, we're going to be at record levels in a very near future because of all the plants, the car plants that are being built.
You can hear more about what Donald Trump had to say last night coming up on World Report at 7. A northern Manitoba community is celebrating the life of a 2-year-old girl. Josiah Young died in January. Her grandmother is charged with second-degree murder. CBC I-Team's Caroline Bargout traveled to Bloodvein First Nation.
Josiah Young would have turned 3 on Easter Sunday. Even though she wasn't here to celebrate, many in her community of Bloodvein First Nation gathered to remember her. They sang to her, shared a birthday cake, and honored her short life. Chief Lisa Young was there.
Because we knew that she wasn't going to be here to celebrate it, we wanted to celebrate it for her.
Josiah's aunt, Roberta Goosehead, organized the event. She had been the toddler's caregiver since Josiah's mom was arrested in December 2023, but she struggled to find someone to look after Josiah while she was at work. Last October, she left her with her maternal grandmother. That woman, Burma Sky, is now charged with second-degree murder in the girl's death.
You know, if she was struggling to keep her, she should have contacted me and I would have went to pick her up.
She made T-shirts with Josiah's picture on them.
Are you guys ready?
And led the community to release 200 balloons in her honor. sending their love to the little girl who brought joy to so many. Caroline Bargood, CBC News, Bloodvein First Nation.
A provincial pot of money set aside to subsidize flights from Winnipeg to 2 U.S. cities has run out of cash. The former PC government created a nearly $5 million fund to get WestJet flights from Richardson International direct to Los Angeles and Atlanta. The Canoe government says that money has been used up and it has no plans to set aside more. The future of the routes is now in question. WestJet says it is reviewing transborder flights in light of reduced Canadian interest in travel to the United States. You can find more Manitoba news updated throughout the day at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
I like your nod to wearing white. I did the same, Heather Wells.
I know, it's that time of year.
Yeah, even though there's no game here tonight, there is a game. We will be very tired tomorrow morning.
It's a late start, 8:30.
Are you off tomorrow?
I am not off tomorrow. I should be.
Me neither. All right, so we'll have lots of coffee for ourselves tomorrow morning. You're right. 8:30 is late for us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's get into the regional forecast. 6:37 a.m. I'm covering weather today. In Winnipeg, sunny. Mix of sun and cloud this afternoon. A high 15. Lighter winds than yesterday. It's clear right now. It's 1. Into tonight, partly cloudy. And then overnight into tomorrow, we're going to have a beautiful day. Sunny and a high of 17 for our Friday. Saturday, sunny and 19. Sunday, sunny and 21. Like what? Looks gorgeous for the next number of days. Over in Brandon, similar. Sunny and fog patches possible this morning, though, so keep that in mind. High 13. Clear tonight in Brandon, low -5. Tomorrow, sunshine and your high 15. Saturday, 16. Bit of clouds. Sunday, sunny and 20 in Brandon. Look at this corner we're turning. In Thompson, today, a little bit different, but still pretty straight ahead spring. A mix of sun and cloud. Chance of flurries this morning. Possible rain showers this afternoon, a high of 9. Tonight, partly cloudy. Chance of showers into the evening, low -5. Tomorrow, you'll get some sun in Thompson as well with a high of 14. And then through Saturday, sunny and 18 degrees. You're joining the party. And then on Sunday, once again, you do have a chance of showers creeping back in with a high of 10. So that's your regional forecast. Current conditions, as mentioned, Winnipeg's clear and 1, Brandon's clear -3, and Thompson's mostly cloudy and -1. Corey's here with a look at our commute.
Got a call from Tim, who is driving to Winnipeg from Matlock. He said it's actually pretty foggy on the highways there. So if you're heading between Winnipeg and the Interlake this morning, heads up, might run into some foggy patches there. He said it wasn't too bad. You could still more or less drive up to speed, but might be a little bit less visible than normal. But if you see anything else, 204-788-3093.
Now, the last few weeks, our Thursday mornings have been about connecting with candidates, with voters, and looking at specific riding issues. Today, our show is really a 360 show, looking all around the province and just hearing from voters. Some of you, though, have been writing to us from everywhere and anywhere in Manitoba about what your issues are. So let's get into some comments on Facebook. Diane Rogers wrote from Thompson. She said, tax cuts don't help people who have no jobs. In Thompson in 2007, apartments were bought up by a New York corporation and another outfit, and rents went $450 a month up to $1,100. Tenants were given 2 weeks to buy back their condos, and a couple of them did, but we lost 3,000 people by 2008, 2009. She says restaurants used to be 5 a.m. to 9 p.m. They went to half the hours. Some started opening 6 a.m. to 3 p.m., others 3 to 9. So her point is there were no part-time workers, she writes. She says, I never went to Canadian Tire, Safeway, or Walmart or Noon to, when one till would be open. So she's just talking about reduced staffing, reduced hours, reduced population. She said 20% of Thompson left, and workers need housing. And if you do look at the stats and population for Thompson, it's correct that they actually fell behind Winkler as one of the bigger cities. So Winkler surpassed them now. So she's just leaning into to what is needed for people where she lives. Corey, what else are people writing to us about?
Yeah, a few people wrote in to tell us who they voted for, who they plan to vote for. Ryan Harper said voted Conservative because voting the same Liberals back in for a fourth time and expecting a different result is the definition of insanity, he said. He says it's time for a change. Barbara Froman from Dauphin wrote in. She says, I'm a card-carrying member of the NDP, but I'm voting Liberal this time around. Both my MP and Poilievre's voting records appall me. Russell Peters also wrote, he says, I'm voting Conservative because I want my freedom back, and I believe that Pierre Poilievre is the one who will make life more affordable, cutting taxes and restoring common sense.
So great to hear from everyone. Keep it coming. Call our listener lines and stay tuned because we're going to get the view from one voter in the West coming up this half hour on the show. We went east first, now we're heading west. But not before we talk to Crystalie Ramlakan, who joins us as she does every day via Zoom with business news. Good morning.
Hey, good morning, Marcy.
So let's begin with U.S. President Donald Trump, who's considering an exemption for some automakers on some tariffs as this ball continues to bounce. What's next? Not next, but what's the context in this for Canada?
So Trump is planning to exempt auto parts from tariffs on imports from China that he imposed to counter fentanyl production and levies on steel and aluminum. But that exemption would be separate from the 25% tariffs on vehicle parts that are scheduled to take effect May 3rd, or by May 3rd at least. And then separate from all of this, Trump says 25% tariffs on cars imported from Canada could go up. So Trump put tariffs on automobile imports to the U.S. earlier this month with a partial carve-out for vehicles made under the Canada-U.S.-Mexico agreement. And as we've talked about before, the North American auto industry is deeply integrated, and vehicles cross the border multiple times before they're completed. But Trump says he doesn't want Canada to play any part in the American auto industry. Now, the Center for Automotive Research in Michigan has said tariffs will result in $108 billion in increased costs for all U.S. automakers. So the big three, Ford, General Motors, and Chrysler, have been lobbying the president, but he has remained committed to the duties, saying the companies must return all manufacturing to the U.S.
To another story, Hudson's Bay making news again today. They were trying to save 6 stores from liquidation. That's not happening anymore?
Yeah, that's right. So the department store chain will start selling off all merchandise at the 6 stores previously spared from liquidation on Friday. So this effectively ends the retail empire's reign and significantly dims the possibility that the business dating back to 1670 will stay alive. Court documents say Canada's oldest company is making the move because it is unlikely that it will find a buyer for the remaining locations. The 6 stores in the Montreal and Toronto areas were excluded from liquidation, which began at other stores last month, because the company had hoped to find an investor or a buyer that could restructure or maintain the business. But the company's financial advisor says the 6 locations are negatively impacting the ability to find a backer, and there is low probability that a bid centered around a 6-store model will surface. But if a bid is received that keeps them alive, Hudson's Bay retains the right to remove the stores from the liquidation process, which is due to wrap up by June 15th. So as we've talked about before, the company filed for creditor protection last month, citing significant difficulty paying its bills because of the U.S. trade war, the effects of the pandemic, and a lack of downtown traffic.
Your final story is about how the death of Pope Francis is affecting the streaming industry.
Yeah, so of course people are processing the death of the world figure with prayers, rituals, but also it appears movies. So streaming minutes for the Oscar-winning film Conclave have jumped. The film explores a fictionalized process of electing a new pope. And even before Amazon Prime Video made Conclave available at no extra cost to subscribers on Tuesday, the film's viewership jumped on Monday. So there's been a 3,200% increase in viewership. And streaming has also jumped for Netflix's 2019 picture, The Two Popes. So that film has seen a 417% increase in viewership.
Abby and I yesterday were talking about, rewatching some of the Da Vinci Code ones, right? There's one that's all around the Pope. And let's get to numbers this morning. What are they looking like?
So in Europe, stocks are lower as a relief rally stalls. So Germany, the UK, and France are all down. In Asia, markets are mixed as a possible thaw in the US-China trade war fuels investor optimism. So Japan is up, Shanghai is up, Hong Kong is down. Oil is up 73 cents to $63 US per barrel. Gold is up 51.50 to $3,339.50 US per ounce. And the dollar is up 0.17 of a cent to 72.2 cents US.
All right, Crystal, we'll talk to you tomorrow.
Okay, thanks, Marcy.
Crystal Ramlicam with CBC, and that is business news. The following airtime is made available for messages provided by registered political parties as required by the Canada Elections Act.
Oh, I can't keep up with the news.
Who can?
Take this federal election. Looked like Poilievre was going to win, and now Carney's got a big lead?
Yeah, but even if he wins, we need the NDP there to fight for us.
Agreed. They got us a bunch of good stuff. Dental care, pharmacare, childcare.
I just don't want to wake up after the election and realize there's no one there to speak up for us regular folks.
Same. I'm sticking with the NDP. Sounds like we're going to need them.
Authorized by the registered agent for the New Democratic Party of Canada.
The proceeding was a paid political ad. Well, thanks for tuning in on this Thursday morning. A little music to ease us into what's going to be a beautiful sunny day. On 89.3, this is Justine Tyrell. I'm proud.
The room is full of what I don't say, but you inspire every vision in the most ways, most days. I fight the hardest with the dark days, with being honest and the heart, please. Got us through the party. Have you running through me like a remedy? Take care of to you, such a remedy. Clarity runs through my mind. I swear it's you. You make me proud through every down. I swear it's you. You make me proud. Through you I'm found. You played your cards and I said I do. I know, could only see myself beside you times two. You got that reassuring mind too. I know. Never overcoming your recovery, it's only we. And through your eyes I see I'm better than what I can be. So go together, like grow forever, like. I swear it's you. You make me proud through every down. I swear it's you. You make me proud. Through you I'm found.
This is Proud out of Calgary. The artist is Justine Tyrell. It's her new single on CBC, 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and YouTube, easing us into a beautiful Thursday. I'm Marcy Marcuso. Well, next on the show, we've been taking you around the province. We'll continue to do that this morning as we talk to voters. 4 days to go, and we're going in 4 directions. So we heard from a voter in Lac du Bonny to start the show who lives east. Now let's go west. My next guest wants to know what happened to the, quote, progressive conservatives. That's how he identifies. He has concerns about the federal Conservative Party today and their tone in this campaign. Peter Harvey's voted for all the main federal parties, he says, in the past. He's here to share what he's thinking ahead of Monday's election. He lives outside of the community of Strathclair on Highway 16 northwest of Brandon. That's in the riding, Mountain Riding. 5 candidates are in the race there. The Conservative incumbent plus the NDP, Liberals, PPC, and the Greens. Peter has been a truck driver. He's been a farmer. Right now he tends to 60 beehives on his 320-acre property. And he's often up early and joins us this morning. Hi, Peter.
Hi, Marcy. Good morning.
So tell me what issues you care about the most when it comes to the election.
Well, I think you started talking about the change in the political sphere, and I think that's what's most important for me. I'm really looking for. It seems to be almost a sinful word to discuss progressiveness, but my family. I think I've mentioned to people before. We're historically. Through the Diefenbaker Conservative and that sort of thing as we grew here, and but the things the tone's changed, and I think I'm a real concern, and I think I'm not alone in looking at the polling numbers that after this American, we've heard the same things that the Conservative Party, which to me is the Reform Party, but it's just would appear that way to me from the outside, that it's not the true good old Brian Mulroney progressive Conservatives anymore.
So you look at this party and you think that this party harkens to you, Reform Party of the 90s.
Well, certainly. Yeah, and like Preston Manning's chirped in this week again talking about separatism, and I think that's a good segue into, you're asking me the biggest concern, and I think it's unity. All this divisive language, and we've watched it south of the border for I don't know how many years, and now we see that it's sort of like this whole talk of freedom of speech and freedoms and all these things, and then but when it comes down to it, it seems to me there's one sort of a freedom agenda, and then nothing else sort of matters. That's what seems to be happening in the States. And I think
what's the buzz up in the coffee shops out your way? I mentioned you have had a Conservative incumbent for some time, but I'm just curious. I'm just curious what you're hearing around you.
Well, I was surprised to hear people in the hood here, and and just yesterday at the post office, talking to, she was NDP voter for years, and these other family I was talking about Conservative for years, and both of them are kind of like myself, which I'm surprised are leaning on the Liberal side of things, and it's simply for this unity issue, I think.
So you got in the same conversation with them.
Yeah,
so
I was surprised. I know this lady, sort of NFU and, quite co-op people, and definitely supporting NDP for years. I was quite surprised to hear it. And I think people... Sorry.
No, I just want to lean back into your vote because I haven't. You just said something there I don't want to get missed here. So you've decided you're going to be voting Liberal.
Yes, and it's twofold. Of course, the leadership is important, but local candidate, Terry seems to be very much on board with agriculture, and is a graduate from University Ag and has worked in the ag industry here too. So, kind of excited about all this stuff, right?
So let me lean into that for a minute, and then let's take people to your land out there.
Sure.
Because you have a 320-acre property. I mentioned you 10 Bs, but one of the interesting things that you were sharing with me off air that you care about is stewardship of the land, and you feel that no party actually is talking about it. What have you done to bring your land back to sort of natural marsh habitat and such? Because this is a passion for you.
Yeah, for sure. And there was a grant that was going to come through and it got really rejected in the hood here, but it was coming down through the federal government on a animal corridor. But yeah, I've for years my dad planted trees with PFRA, which again with Conservatives under Harper shut that down. So giving farmers and anyone who actually wanted them, towns, communities, free trees, and so this farm has a legacy back to '65 for conservation. And then my parents and myself in the '90s, they're both passed away sadly, but we both had a different quarter section. Now they're together, but we put land through Ducks Unlimited into a conservation. So almost half of the farm, it's not in a conservation agreement, but almost half of it's left to natural habitats, and it's hugely important. The United Nations was talking about it, so. Again, I think no party specifically talking about it, but I think the Liberals are probably the most in tune with United Nations and those type of policies. So I'm hopeful that there'll be some more stewardship projects and programs coming down. But it's a bit lonely, I think, doing it. There's a lot of bulldozing and draining, which I very much respect farmers doing their thing. It's it's a lot of money involved in big acres and that sort of thing. But for us, we're very much, I'm kind of, I'm already thinking legacy at this point in my life. Right?
Got it. You mentioned your family, you have roots that would have supported the NDP. How do you think that they're doing in this election? Like in your view?
I just don't feel that I've connected with the leader, and that's maybe sad on my part. Everyone seems to be saying all these things. Personally, I don't feel the Jack Layton, Tommy Douglas, even Tom Mulcair, and those type of people. Even here, I very much connect with our premier, the NDP spectrum. But federally, I just feel very. I don't know. I don't feel that there's these huge causes and this excitement. And I mean, I'm very thankful for the the dental care and daycare programs. But I think the Liberals will continue to support that type of program, social programs, because we're let's face it, we're going to be in really, really, really tough, uncertain economic times, coming. Well, it's here, and it's going to get worse.
Peter, thank you so much for telling us all about how you came to your decision, and you are decided for how you're going to vote on Monday.
Okay.
And we'll talk again. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much. Have a great day. Enjoy the sunshine.
Will do. That's Peter Harvey. He's a voter in Western Manitoba, lives just outside Strathclair, Manitoba. The candidates in the riding are Conservative incumbent Dan Masier, Liz Clayton, for the Greens, Terry Hayward for the Liberals, Andrew Douglas Maxwell for the NDP, and Jim Oliver for the People's Party of Canada. You're listening to a special edition of Information Radio. We're not out in one riding. We're taking you virtually all over the province this morning. So in the next hour of the show, stay tuned to see where we're going to go next to connect with another voter and hear what they're thinking ahead of Monday. Right now, it's 3 minutes to 7 o'clock, and Heather Wells joins us again live from our news center with headlines.
Good morning. Well, Elections Canada wants to make sure everyone gets their say on Election Day, including the unhoused. It has been visiting drop-in shelters and giving information letters to staff so then they can prove the identity of people who use their services. People with no place to live face many barriers when they try to vote. NDP leader Jagmeet Singh is in Winnipeg today, hoping to shore up support in a traditional stronghold. The party retained its grip on Elmwood Transcona 7 months ago when Leela Dance won a by-election there by just under 1,200 votes. Liberal leader Mark Carney is also in Winnipeg later today. I'll be back with more Manitoba news coming up at 7:30.
All right. Thanks, Heather.
You're welcome.
Well, you heard my last guest saying enjoy the sunshine, and that's because we're going to get a lot of it today. It's just coming up in the downtown. It's going to be a bright start. Our high is 15 degrees in the city of Winnipeg. By the way, Brandon, you're also going to be sunny out west in a high of 13. The commute so far, nothing major to report, but call us, please, if you do need to pass something along. 788-3093. Pardon me, is the 3093 is the number to call. In the next hour of the show, we're going to take you to Morden. We're going to take you to Austin. We're going to take you to St. Teresa Point First Nation. We're going to hear from more voters all around Manitoba about what they are thinking about ahead of the election. In Morden, a new Canadian attended a candidate forum last night to try to decide who's going to get her first ever federal vote. So we're going to hear whether or not she made her decision based on what she heard. Also, a voter from Austin says he is undecided, but could vote Conservative and could vote Green. He says the Liberals have to convince him that their plan to add to the federal debt actually adds up and is worth it. So stay tuned. We're going to have those points of view on in the next hour. And then up in St. Teresa Point, the First Nation there, we're going to talk to a voter there who will tell us more about why he's worried about Trump, but more worried about social issues in his remote community. He says they're made worse because of a housing shortage, so we're going to hear from him. So lots of comprehensive coverage. In addition, we have a follow-on a story that we were talking about yesterday, and it has to do with tourism in the province. According to recent border crossing stats, fewer Americans are vacationing in Canada, but in Winnipeg, economic development says they've actually noticed an increase in American visitors. So we're going to try and find out more about why, and that is coming up in the next hour as well. You're with CBC, 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and YouTube. Stay with us. World Report's next.
Today on The Current.
But the North is open for business. We do have a lot of resources in the territory across Northern Canada.
We've been traveling across Canada this election campaign, asking Canadians who they're voting for and why. We will hear from people in the territories about the key issues there at a time when Northern security is in focus. That's coming up on The Current.
The Current with Matt Galloway. This morning at 8:37, 9:07 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. U.S. President Donald Trump says he does not want to influence the Canadian election, but he is still talking about our country. Listen to what he told reporters in the Oval Office last night.
I have to be honest, as a state, it works great. As a nation, 95% of Canada, what they do is they buy from us and they sell to us. If they didn't have us, and if we didn't spend that money, as Trudeau told me, they would cease to exist.
Trump also said he was considering raising auto tariffs again. whether it was Trump's intention or not. These comments are having an effect on the campaign trail. Let's go to Janice McGregor in our Parliamentary Bureau. And Janice, walk us through this.
Marcia, all had been quiet on the White House front. Mark Carney's closing arguments to voters this week were already having to kind of refocus voters on Canada's battle with Washington. And then last night, he had fresh ammunition.
Once again today in the Oval Office, President Trump, he is trying to break us so that America can own us. Yeah, that's the answer. That's the answer, Donald. That will never happen. Ever happen.
New reporting this morning from our colleagues at Radio Canada is revealing more than we were previously told about Mark Carney's first phone call with Donald Trump. Mark Carney initially told reporters that Trump had respected Canada in both his private and his public comments that day. But then Carney had paused. He said he was tempted to add more, but he didn't. Sources now reveal that Trump did bring up the idea of Canada becoming the 51st state, a moment described as not easy, but that Carney apparently dealt with it by letting Trump speak and then saying the two leaders could agree to disagree on that one. The Prime Minister's office now confirms to Radio Canada that Trump did bring up the 51st state, but denies that Carney replied he'd agree to disagree. After this tense start, the call was, according to sources, still generally a positive one, lining up with what we were all led to believe at the time.
How did the other leaders react to Trump's comments?
Well, Pierre Poilievre didn't react. He delivered a lengthy stump speech in Nova Scotia last night, just over an hour after Trump spoke, but didn't mention Trump's latest foray into the campaign. NDP leader Jagmeet Singh, however, was asked at his stop in Winnipeg whether he thought Trump was trying to meddle with this vote.
Well, it's certainly having an impact. Would it rise the level of foreign interference? I mean, I think there are threats to our country that are wrong. And we've got to all come together and fight back.
The most interesting reaction to watch here may be in Quebec, because when this issue had faded from the spotlight, the Bloc Québécois numbers started to creep up again. Those could be pivotal in whether we see a majority or a minority result on Monday.
All right. Thank you, Janice.
You're welcome.
Janice McGregor reporting from Ottawa. The big question in this election may be who is the best leader to stand up to Donald Trump. But it's not the only ballot box issue. Parties know Canadians are dealing with a cost of living crisis, and they're pitching tax cuts and social programs to help. The CBC's Kwabino Oduro caught up with voters in Montreal to see if it's resonating.
Camille Vec loves Montreal's mile-end neighborhood for its cafes, thrift stores, and diversity. But she says she's living paycheck to paycheck.
I think being able to pay your utilities and rent and everything without being in debt at the end of the month.
At a grocery store down the block, owner Javid Iqbal is avoiding price increases and even giving people free groceries at times, but wants to see governments stick to their promises about making living affordable.
There's already everything is so high, people cannot afford to have big families, and people are having no job, and we try best ourselves, to give a little break to people with the prices.
Lauren Morris also lives in the area. She says those breaks are good in the short term, but she wants to see the government do more for those with lower incomes.
Groceries are expensive. I want to go back to school. I want to make a better life for myself, and it doesn't feel like the government are on my side with that.
Mary Lee Boyer Sanders is a financial consultant who helps lower income families budget. She says it's hard to come up with a plan when they are struggling to make ends meet.
It's a real difficult situation at the moment for a lot of people, young or old. Where do you cut? We don't really have the answers anymore. They're not as simple as they were a few years ago. That's the truth.
Boyer Sanders says she understands the economy is the top priority, but she wants the next federal government to make it the cost of living. Kwabino Oduro, CBC News, Montreal.
Narendra Modi says terrorism will not go unpunished. India's Prime Minister says he will track down those behind Tuesday's attack in Indian-administered Kashmir.
Every effort will be made to ensure that justice is done.
26 tourists were killed in that assault. Tension between India and Pakistan is surging after the attack. Both countries are canceling visas for each other's citizens. Pakistan is also closing its airspace to all Indian aircrafts and suspending trade with the country. Islamabad's move follows earlier measures from India. Ishan Garg has more.
We will pursue them to the ends of the earth.
Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi vowing revenge. In his first public speech since the attack in Pahalgam, Modi vowed to destroy terrorist hideouts and also supporters of terrorism, a gesture seemingly aimed at neighbouring Pakistan. Islamabad, meanwhile, is formulating a strategy to counter India's latest move. Delhi has decided to downgrade its diplomatic ties and close its main border with Pakistan. It has also suspended a crucial water treaty, a move that could strain fresh water supply to Islamabad. Some in the Pakistan administration are now accusing India of staging the attack and pinning the blame on Pakistan, though without presenting any concrete proof. With tensions rising, Islamabad-based political observer Raja Faisal believes things could spiral out of control.
War is not a solution. Probe is the solution. But if war is being imposed on Pakistan, then, of course, Pakistan is left with no other choice but to fight against them.
Though the restive region of Kashmir is no stranger to armed militancy, an attack of this scale on civilians is rare. All eyes are now on Delhi's next move. Some experts say it could launch a targeted military strike, elevating tension even further. Ishan Garg for CBC News, New Delhi.
At least 9 people have been killed in overnight Russian attacks on Kyiv. Dozens of explosions rocked the Ukrainian capital in what is the biggest attack in 9 months. More than 70 people are injured, including 6 children. President Volodymyr Zelensky is cutting short his official trip to South Africa to return home. He says the attack is part of the Kremlin's effort to pressure the U.S. The attacks come as President Donald Trump lashed out at Zelensky yesterday. Trump accuses him of damaging ceasefire talks by refusing to cede Crimea to Russia as part of a potential peace plan. The largest documentary film festival in North America begins today in Toronto. Hot Docs is in its 32nd year, but just last year its future was in doubt. Organizers say they've made some changes and are back in a robust way. Ali Chiasson has more.
We're not totally out of the woods, but we're very close.
Head of festival programming Heather Haynes says Hot Docs endured a closure of their Toronto cinema, layoffs, and being on the brink of financial ruin, all in the last 2 years. After a restructuring of their board of directors, Haynes says they're on track to deliver compelling programming for the festival's 32nd year.
Hot Docs is incredibly important because so many times you see a lot of films recently and now that are not getting picked up. They're not getting distribution.
The festival lineup has 113 films from 47 different countries. It opens with Parade, Queer Acts of Love and Resistance.
There's no place for the state in the bedrooms of the nation.
It's about the resistance and perseverance of Canada's queer community, set in Toronto. Producer Justine Pimlott.
Who are the people whose activism and whose bravery led us to where we are today.
Pimlott says the timing is right for such a film.
Sadly, we're in a time where those rights are being challenged.
All the more important, she says, to have a robust documentary festival like Hot Docs.
It's a festival that I've been coming to throughout my entire career, way back, when we watched films on monitors in hotel rooms. It really is an incredible moment where I feel extraordinarily proud.
The film festival runs now through May 4th. Ali Chiasson, CBC News, Toronto.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. News anytime, cbcnews.ca. And if you like the World Report podcast, please follow us and tell a friend. It helps spread the word. I'm Marcia Young.
Good morning, Manitoba. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is Information Radio. We're live in downtown Winnipeg, and it's going to be a really nice day across a lot of the province. But beautiful sunshine in Winnipeg. It's 1 degree. We're heading for 15. Well, as it turns out, if you're American, the hottest place to vacation might be Winnipeg. Economic Development Winnipeg says it's seeing more tourists coming in by land from the United States, but that's not the same story across Canada. We're going to have that conversation coming up. And then a lot of this hour is going to be devoted to the theme of the morning. 4 days to go in 4 directions. We are taking you virtually all around the province today to hear from voters in different communities. So we are going to be hearing from the Pembina Valley, taking you to the Pembina Valley, where a first Canadian there, new Canadian, is voting her very first federal election. She was at a candidates forum last night in Morden, hoping it would help her decide who to vote for. We're going to hear what issues matter to her. Also, we'll fly you up to remote St. Teresa Point First Nation to check in with a voter who's undecided between the Liberals and the NDP. And we have a view from the West as well. A voter from Austin, Manitoba will join us, so stay tuned. A busy hour ahead. Heather Wells here with headlines.
Well, a housing expert in Winnipeg says the conversation on housing in this federal election must include social housing. Shauna McKinnon is chair at the Urban and Inner City Studies Department in the University of Winnipeg. She says details on social housing in the major party platforms have been missing. A provincial pot of money set aside to subsidize flights from Winnipeg to 2 U.S. cities has run out of cash. The former PC government created a nearly $5 million fund to get WestJet flights direct from Richardson International to Los Angeles and Atlanta. The new government says that money's been used up and it has no plans to add more. I'll be back with more Manitoba news at 7:30.
Sunny and 15 in Winnipeg, and right now it's 1. Corey, how's the commute?
Very quiet overall. I heard earlier about some foggy patches from Tim, who was driving between Matlock and Winnipeg. Those might dissipate, throughout the day. But if you see anything else going on out there, though, give me a call on the CBC commuter line. That number to call, 204-788-3093.
Well, let's take you to Morden now. That is where Mariam Tikankova works as an executive director of Many Hands, a weekly food bank in Morden, among other programs. This is her first time voting in a federal election. She moved to Canada from Kazakhstan 7 years ago. She's a Canadian citizen, and as of yesterday, she was undecided. Last night, she went to a candidates forum in Morden. She hoped it would help her maybe narrow down who she could vote for come Monday. Her riding is Portage-Lisgar, which has been a Conservative stronghold since 2003. The current incumbent is Conservative MP Brandon Leslie. The Liberals, NDP, Greens, and People's Party also have candidates in the riding. And Mariam joins us via Zoom. Good morning.
Good morning.
So what did you hear last night in terms of issues and conversation that helped you narrow down your vote? What were you listening for?
Well, yeah, the forum went very well, I think. It was a great opportunity to hear directly from the candidates, and I was really glad I could be there to speak up for the people who use the food bank. The food bank usage is just incredibly high in our little city of population 9,000. We have about 1,000 people registered, and that's about 10% of Morden's population. So I asked about their plans to address poverty and food insecurity, not just short-term fixes, but real long-term solutions like affordable housing, better wages, and reducing food waste. Some candidates had thoughtful responses, others seemed less prepared, but I think it's so important that we keep bringing these issues into the spotlight, especially during an election. There are not fringe concerns. They affect thousands of families across Canada every single day.
You were talking about, the situation with the food bank. From when you arrived 7 years ago, how has it changed? Like, how much worse has it become?
Well, it changed dramatically, I can say. So we came to Canada 7 years ago, and I can say we could afford, I could afford be homestay mom. And my husband was working, and we was just okay. But now when I see our clients coming for the food bank, they just can't afford, like, 2 people working and they still cannot afford food.
How I know you don't want to share how you're voting, so I will ask you, and that's your right, I will ask you though, whether or not last night helped you narrow it down.
It did. Yeah, it did help. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. As a newcomer, I like I said, I came to Canada with hope for a better future, and I still believe in that. And last night was really helpful. But I've seen how hard it can be for newcomers to afford basic needs, even when they're working, like I said. That's why I speak up for all families just trying to build a life here.
As you mentioned, you asked a question about what you cared about last night, and you did hear some responses. But what was the tone of last night in terms of what issues were mostly discussed?
Well, we were talked a lot, like the candidates, they did talk a lot, and both like liberals and conservative candidates, and we also had we had 3 yesterday night, and the candidates responded to my questions, and I appreciate that. The liberal candidate talked about ongoing support programs and investments in housing and affordability. The conservative candidate focused more on reducing taxes and addressing the cost of living. So each had a different approach, but I was glad to hear food insecurity and poverty being addressed as real priorities.
When you are going to vote on Monday, Miriam, will you be thinking about those candidates in the discussion, or do you think also about the federal leaders? Like, how do you decide?
It's a tough question. First of all, it's a first federal election for me and my family. So I'm still learning how everything works in Canada. I'm still Googling and reading a lot about the system, about everything. So of course I will have everything in mind.
Anything you want to add as you were preparing to speak with us this morning about your thinking about your vote?
No, I think that's, yeah. As we head into this election, I think it's really important to remember that food insecurity is a political issue. So the choices the leaders make on housing, wages, social support directly affect whether families have enough to eat, right? So, and as I said, at our food bank in Morden, we see this every day. Families with young kids, seniors, and newcomers, people on fixed incomes, many of them are doing everything right, working hard, and still not able to make ends meet. So, yeah.
Well said. My next guest actually comes from a completely different part of Manitoba. We're going south to north, in fact. But I know that one of his sentiments is also just don't forget the people. And we're going to hear from him in a moment. Miriam, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
That is Miriam Tigankova. She lives in Morden, which is in the Portage-Lisgar riding. This is her first time voting in a federal election. The candidates in that riding: Janine Gibson for the Greens, Robert Crease for the Liberals, Kevin Larson for the PPC, Brendan Leslie is the Conservative incumbent, and Lisa Tessier for the New Democratic Party. It is 7:18 right now. If you're just joining the show, I'm talking about heading north now, because our whole show is about looking and just touching base with voters all around Manitoba this morning. So we're taking you 600 kilometers north of Winnipeg to the remote fly-in or boat-in community of St. Teresa Point First Nation. We're on the southwestern shore of Island Lake. It's a place I spent some time for CBC's initiative Communities in Focus. About 5,500 people live there, with the prettiest little horseshoe beaches you've ever seen in St. Teresa. But there's a serious shortage of housing, and that is one of the ballot box issues from my next guest. This is the riding of Churchill, Keewatin, Nookaski. Nikki Ashton's the NDP incumbent, first won in 2008. Liberal Rebecca Chartrand is running, Conservative Lachlan Dunarty, and Dylan Young for the PPC. Lyle Wood is my next guest. He's the principal of St. Teresa Point First Nation Elementary, Middle, and High School. Hello there, Lyle.
Hello, good morning.
So I know that you did say to me, when we were asking you if you'd come on the air with us this morning, that for you actually ran into a candidate in the remote airport up your way, and you told them, like, don't forget the people, or something to that effect, right?
Something to that effect. We're just she wasn't necessarily talking about her platform, but she was listening to us, like what our concerns were.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a good encounter, I guess.
And that was the Liberal candidate that you happened to run into there.
That was the Liberal candidate, Rebecca Chartrand, yes.
Yeah. I understand that you are undecided. Which way are you leaning and why?
Either Liberal or NDP.
What are the issues you care most about overall that you hope candidates will be thinking about from your Northern Manitoba point of view?
Well, there's a lot of stuff that I care about, including housing and addictions that run rampant in our communities, and also sports. We have to participate in sports. We have to raise lots of money. Like, if we have a volleyball team of 10, that's already like 10,000 just to go out, and not including meals or hotels, and that's not sponsored in any like, we have to fundraise lots for that. So, like, if we go to zones, Manitoba zones, high school zones, when we go to the qualifier for zone, and if we win the zone, we have to come back, and then when we go to the provincial, it's another 30,000 to raise just for airfares alone. So that's like 100,000 that we have to spend.
So to give those
in the provincial.
So we mentioned your principle to give the kids those valuable opportunities and sport, even if they're achieving. I mean, it costs money.
It costs way like out of this earth, of this world.
So tell me a little bit about what you would say to the Liberals, should they earn your vote this time around, about what they need to do better, given that they've been in power for 10 years.
I guess to advocate more, because I think the Liberals haven't been in power in this riding for a while, and the NDP were the ones that have been talking for us. But most people say that we only see them during election time. That's the only time we see them. But I've seen people advocating for us in Ottawa at Parliament. So,
what do you look for in a leader? Are you paying attention to the leaders of the parties?
You mean like federal leaders, party leaders? A strong sense of how the country is, not just their views, but respecting other people's views and how they want Canada to be. Like, when I listened to that debate and all the federal leaders, everyone had a good like, if we could take one piece from each party leader, I think one party could be for the people, because it splits in parts. That's what I think.
So you felt like there were all the party leaders, when you watched the debate, actually said something that gave you some confidence that they would stand up for Canada in this current time.
Yeah, because I look for positives in people. I don't look at the negatives in people. Maybe that's a fault of mine. I don't know.
I don't think looking for the positive is ever a fault, Lyle. Let me ask you about why you haven't mentioned the Conservatives, because you said this time you're deciding between the NDP and the Liberals. Why aren't the Conservatives, speaking to you?
Yeah, as an educator, I kind of grade people, so I'm grading the parties. I used to live in Winnipeg, and when the election time came around, I think there was a conservative that was living in that house that we were renting before us. And when the Liberal Party were canvassing the neighborhood, when they saw me, when I opened the door, they said, "Oh, hi, this is we're Conservatives." Then basically just, "Okay, see you later." That was it. I didn't even hear what they were for or what their platform was, and that kind of said, "Oh, maybe that's just maybe they're just in a hurry or something."
But it stayed with you.
Yeah. Then the next election came around, and I saw the same people, and they bypassed my house this time. They didn't even bother knocking on my door.
Why do you think that is, that they're not engaging with you?
I think it was because I was First Nations That's what I think.
And that stayed with you.
And that stayed with me. And in my writing, I don't even know who the conservative person is. All I see are Nikki Ashton and Rebecca Starr trying to get our vote. I don't even know the Green Party or the People's Party. And it's just those two.
We'll have to touch base with you after the election, Lyle, given that you're undecided, and I know that you're gathering all the information, watching the debates, and engaged. And we'll see who in the end you're going to choose. Thank you very much for giving us your view from the north.
Yeah. Do you are you familiar with Seinfeld? Have you watched Seinfeld?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Anyway, I was just in my analysis of the parties. I think of this one scene. I thought of this one scene that I wanted to mention when George Costanza was picking somebody for a scholarship for the Susan Ross Foundation.
Okay.
And he brought in this guy, this young man, and he was introducing him to the board of directors or something. And he says, "This is Stephen Corn. He's the average student." And then those guys were saying, "Well, this foundation is supposed to be largely academic or sponsorship." And that guy said, "Well, we all know the flaws and biases of standardized tests." And then that guy said, the director says, "These are not standardized tests. These are his grades." So how people introduce their party leader or they're the ones that they want people to vote for, and that's how I think of we know the flaws and biases of media or something like that. Well, this is the grade for the conservatives that never came to my house. Or I don't even know who the conservative candidate is for this writing. You know what I mean?
Well, we'll leave it there, Lyle. I know that I mentioned the Conservative candidate's name, and so I just feel like I should mention it is Lachlan Donardi. But thank you very much for being with us this morning. Appreciate it. We got to go. Bye. That's Lyle Wood, principal of St. Teresa Point First Nation Elementary, Middle, and High School. His riding is Churchill, Keewatin, Nook, Aski. We're late getting to sports. I apologize, Scott Regehr. What do you want to lead with?
Well, let's lead with the Jets, who are back in action, of course, tonight in St. Louis, trying to go up 3-0 in their series. Already up 2-0. Historically, in those circumstances, 91% of the time, the leading team goes through the next round. So that bodes well for the Jets, as does their road record. They were the best in the league this year away from home, and they won their 2 games in St. Louis against the Blues. Still, defenseman Josh Morrissey isn't putting a lot of stock into history.
Personally, I don't think so. That 2019 series is a long time ago, and obviously this season, as everyone always says, what happens in the regular season ends when the regular season ends. So we're just focused on having a good practice and going into St. Louis, to bring our best road game and continue to build on some things we've done well and some things we can do better.
Yeah, puck drop tonight is 8:30. Elsewhere, last night, Edmonton and Montreal both lost, so they trail in their series 2-0. And the other game tonight will have the Leafs trying to go up, like Winnipeg, 3-0 in their series against Ottawa.
Professional Women's Hockey League's announced it's expanding.
Yeah, to Vancouver. The city will be home to the league's 7th franchise next season. PWHL Vice President Jana Hefford explains why it was chosen.
I think, there's a lot of things we looked at, and we wanted to find, media market reach was important, infrastructure and facilities, community growth, grassroots hockey. And then I think the economic and partnership opportunities that exist in Canada's 3rd biggest city. So it's something we're really excited about the opportunities for this team.
Expanding so far west, Marcy, comes with increased travel costs for the existing teams, so it stands to reason an 8th club, perhaps in Seattle or Edmonton, could be announced before long. We'll stay tuned on that. And Jana Hefford says the takeover tour next year is possibly going to involve Winnipeg, so, down the road, that could be an option too. So we'll see.
All right. Thanks a lot, Scott. Appreciate it.
You betcha.
That's Scott Regehr with Morning Sports. Your news is next.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 7:30, it is 1 degree. Beautiful sunshine out there this morning. We will see a few afternoon clouds roll in. A high today of 15. Well, Manitobans across the province say they are focused on housing in this federal election. CBC's Rosanna Hempel brings us one man's fight for home ownership.
It is very frustrating.
Jared Heinrich says after budgeting for groceries and rent, he barely has anything left for a down payment.
When rent is as much or if not more than a mortgage payment, it makes it very hard for a young couple like me and my wife Laura to save up to buy a house.
This 25-year-old tradesman in Winkler hopes the next government makes first-time home ownership more achievable. The Conservatives say they'd cut GST on new homes. The Liberals say they'd also eliminate GST for first-time home buyers, while the NDP say they'd require the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation to offer low-interest, public-backed mortgages. Heinrich says he'd welcome a GST cut on his first home, but he says more help is needed from Canada's next leader.
Please just remember us bottom-of-the-barrel Canadians that are just great getting by, and just please make it affordable for us to live again, because it's not.
Rosanna Hempel, CBC News, Winkler.
Elections Canada wants to make sure everyone gets to have their say on Election Day, including the unhoused. It has been visiting drop-in shelters and giving confirmation letters to staff so they can prove the identity of people who use their services. Cindy Titus at Main Street Project says they helped 17 people vote in advance polls.
17 isn't necessarily a big number when you're talking about our programs and services serving hundreds of people, but I would say it is a big number considering that the folks that we serve have a lot of other things going on, and that they made voting a priority in their days. That's a pretty big deal.
Titus says people with no place to live face a lot of barriers when they try to vote, including a lack of ID, transportation, and access to party platforms. NDP leader Jagmeet Singh is in Winnipeg today, hoping to shore up support in a traditional stronghold. The party retained its grip on Elmwood-Transcona 7 months ago when Leela Dance won a by-election by just under 1,200 votes. National polls suggest NDP support might be eroding. Dance is giving this campaign her all.
I'm worried about getting enough sleep at night. That's the reality. But I'm just pushing it for the next 5 days. And getting back to doing what I'm doing, casework and helping people. Like the amount of people that are still lining up in my office as a member of parliament to help them is the reason why I'm doing this.
After addressing party faithful at a rally last night, Singh is scheduled to be back in the riding for a campaign announcement this morning. Liberal leader Mark Carney is also in Winnipeg later today. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre is in Halifax this morning and then flies to Saskatoon. U.S. President Donald Trump once again is issuing tariff threats against Canada's auto industry.
I really don't want cars from Canada. So when I put tariffs on Canada, they're paying 25%, but that could go up. In terms of cars, when we put tariffs on, all we're doing is we're saying we don't want your cars in all due respect. We want really to make our own cars.
Trump speaking to reporters last night. An overnight attack killed 9 people in Ukraine. Missiles and drones hitting the capital. 70 people are wounded, including children. You can hear more national and international news coming up on World Report at 8. While many Manitobans were celebrating Easter Sunday, Blood Vein First Nation was remembering Josiah Young on what would have been her 3rd birthday. Josiah died in January. Her maternal grandmother is charged with second-degree murder. Her aunt Roberta Goosehead remembers Josiah as a vibrant little girl who loved hugs and craved attention.
She wanted your attention all the time. Like, even if it was just playing with her fingers, she'd be like, "Mom, look." So she was very lovable.
Goosehead wants people to remember Josiah not for how she died, but for the joy she gave to so many. Well, a provincial pot of money set aside to subsidize flights from Winnipeg to 2 U.S. cities has run out of cash. As CBC's Bartley Kivas reports, it raises questions about the future of WestJet flights from Richardson International to Los Angeles and Atlanta.
The former PC government created a nearly $5 million fund to subsidize WestJet flights from Winnipeg to LA and Atlanta. The Canoe government says the money has run out and it has no plans to set aside more cash for flight subsidies. The future of these routes is now in question. Trade tensions and anti-U.S. sentiment have reduced the demand for travel to the U.S. WestJet says it's reviewing a number of transborder flights. Earlier this week, it announced more flights between Winnipeg and Halifax and new connections between Winnipeg and St. John's, both to capitalize on increasing interest in domestic travel and connections to Europe. Bartlett Kivas, CBC News, Winnipeg.
And you can find more Winnipeg news, more Manitoba news as well at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
All right, thanks, Heather.
You're welcome.
Right now in the city of Winnipeg, it is 1 degree. Let's get into your regional forecast now. Now, because we're going all around the province talking to voters today, I figured I'd mention that in Morden it's 0, in St. Teresa Point it's 0, and in Austin it's 0 as well. We're going to talk to a voter who lives just around Austin, Manitoba to the west, coming up momentarily. First, though, the rest of that regional forecast. In Winnipeg right now, clear, 1 degree. It's calm. It's sunny today for the day and a high of 15. Into tonight, we're expecting it to be, it'll be a little bit partly cloudy and then a low of 0. And then Friday, sunny 17, Saturday sunny 19, Sunday sunny 21. So if this holds, just beautiful from Friday through Sunday. Over in Brandon, similar conditions, sunshine high 13, clear tonight, and then Friday and Saturday looking of highs of sunshine, highs of 15 and 16, and then by Sunday your high in Brandon could reach 20 degrees with the sun. In Thompson, currently it is mostly cloudy -1. For you today, a mix of sun and cloud, chance of flurries, chance of rain showers this afternoon, just a 30% chance, a high of 9. Tonight, partly cloudy, and you're looking for a low down to -5. Tomorrow for Thompson, mainly sunny and a high of 14. As I say, you're joining the warm party, and that continues through Saturday. Sunshine and a high of 18 degrees in Thompson. On Sunday, though, you do have a chance of showers and a high of 10. That's your regional forecast. Let's get to the morning commute with Corey Funk.
Been a very quiet commute overall so far. Heard about a bit of fog between Matlock and Winnipeg from Tim on the commuter line. But other than that, no major issues out there, but if you see something going on, do give me a call on that CBC commuter line. That number to call, 204-788-3093.
Well, let's go now to Austin, Manitoba, and head west on our show as we try to touch base with different voters, or we do touch base with different voters all over Manitoba. It's our 360 view, 4 days to go to the election. Austin is a town of about 400 people. It's between Portage la Prairie and Winnipeg. It's in the Mountain Riding. There's 5 candidates in the race there, the Conservative incumbent, and then an NDP candidate, a Liberal, a PPC, and a Green candidate. Luke Neufeld lives on a small acreage just outside of Austin. He and his wife, they love to garden. He's 47 years old. He's a manager at a small cabinet and millwork company, and he's a father to 3 kids, age 12, 15, and 17. I reached him yesterday.
I always vote. I think as soon as I turned 18, I've been voting in every federal and provincial election. Not always the municipal level, but mostly I try to if I'm able to.
And do you vote the same way every time, or is it dependent, what's happening?
I try to be really open-minded, so I have not always voted the same way. This specific federal election, I've kind of said right from the start, I don't actually want to make a decision until I hear everybody's full platform. I want to understand, the promises and how they're going to pay for them. And, often that's I come from that direction, but it's also a frustrating thing. Often you don't really feel like you get the answers you want or need.
You have candidates for the Liberal, the Conservatives, the NDP, and the PPC, as well as the Greens. You've got a full slate there. So you're undecided. Are you leaning into any of those parties?
Certainly not PPC. I don't feel like they represent my values. I have voted Conservative, I think, in the last election here. And this time, I want to know the candidates. I want to know, are they connected to my community or not? And if they are elected, how would they represent me? So I'm not really looking at Mark Carney or Pierre Poilievre because I don't think they think about Austin or the Riding Mountain zone. I know Dan Mazur is the Conservative. He's the incumbent. Because he's been in the community, the Conservatives have come to all these little towns. They run a a passport clinic or something to help people who maybe can't make it to the city to fill it out. Like that to me is a bit of a plus for Dan and his crew, but maybe everybody would do that. I did like what he had to say about his farming practices and being kind of aware of environmental concerns. Like I think sometimes some conservatives come off as they don't care about the environment, but he doesn't. And I mean, I think I could look at the Green Party candidate and say much the same. They would probably run the ball a little further down the field, likely. Our Green Party candidate at least has their own website, so I'm going to get a little more information about them and see what they would do. I mean,
would you consider voting Green?
I would.
Yeah. And then would you consider voting Conservative again?
I would, yeah. Like I was aware of the debates. I didn't actually tune in. I watched clips more so, which probably isn't the best way to do it. But I don't actually enjoy or appreciate the way they're sort of set up to just bicker and argue and stuff. I feel it's very unproductive.
It's a specific format, a debate. Yeah.
Yeah. Like in business, if I'm having a meeting with somebody, I'm looking, how can I build bridges? How can I build a relationship? We probably won't always see eye to eye on everything, but we can work together to make something that works really well for both of us.
Got it. You have a lot of property up there, or are you in a lot in town?
I live actually out in the country, just on a little acreage. I have 12 acres. We just garden, my wife and I, and the kids when we can get their help. We put in the effort to get bigger and like, how can we amend the soil with something that isn't harming something somewhere else? If we know somebody who, cleans out their barns for their sheep or their goats, and all they're going to do is throw that away, we could take it and use it to amend our soil without, buying fertilizers and stuff, and it helps.
So you're mindful of all that. You wrote to me, show me the candidates. You said, show me that you can see someone with less influence, power, money, etc. than you, someone you fundamentally disagree with on many issues, and then show me you can still treat them as valuable and worthy of your best efforts. And that is the kind of person, that is someone you write who is worthy of my vote.
100%.
Yeah. So civil discourse and, being able to have conversations in this charged up time, shall we say, is important to you, that we come down and talk.
100% it is.
Yeah. Now, you also said another Liberal government would worry you, and this has to do with your kids. So can you tell me a little bit about why?
So we're on the verge of, post-secondary and maybe early careers. And I mean, my 17-year-old has a bit of a path. The other two, they're still finding their way in, but I think like any parent, you kind of want the sky to be the limit. And I know for us, my wife and I, we want to be able to support them if, generally speaking, taxes go up and the cost of living is going up and inflation rises. Those are things that are going to handcuff us a little bit to help them, or even their own opportunities. And I want for my kids, for them to not feel like there's a restriction on them. I want them to be able to go get the education they feel they need to succeed in life and be good citizens and be a help to the country and their communities.
And you wrote to me on the Liberals and why those two things are tied together is that you write the massive deficit spending plan is worrisome. You've never understood borrowing into prosperity. And you say we try to live within our means. And you say you don't see the Liberal plan that way.
Correct. And I know that they're talking about this is not like just throwing money at it. It's like it's investing. And I have to do more research, honestly, before I would actually make that decision too, to see, like, do these things actually add up? If you could say that would create prosperity and show like a really clear path, like that's something I would still entertain as a vote then. But on the face value, it intimidates me. It makes me very nervous and unsure.
I looked up the number here. So Mark Carney, the Liberal leader, announcing over the weekend his platform would include $130 billion in new measures over 4 years. But when you combine it with existing spending, it would add $225 billion to the federal debt.
Yeah, it makes me nervous.
Really, really great to talk to such an informed and still maybe a little undecided voter in Western Manitoba. Anything to add that I haven't asked you about, Luke?
Maybe I will say I just love living in a small community. I actually think the world could learn a lot from lots of small community living and just the way we look after each other and stuff. And it doesn't really matter what political stripe people have. We always rally around each other, and it's amazing out here.
That's a beautiful sentiment to leave a conversation on. We'll see what happens on Monday. Thank you so much, Luke, for talking to CBC.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
That's Luke Neufeld. He lives just outside of Austin, Manitoba, to the west. The candidates in Riding Mountain are Conservative incumbent Dan Major, Liz Clayton for the Greens, Terry Hayward for the Liberals, Andrew Douglas Maxwell for the NDP, and Jim Oliver for the People's Party of Canada.
Like an alligator in a vest, CBC News has a team of investigators biting into the big stories. Actually, this isn't a news promo. It's a pun contest promo. Information Radio is looking for your best puns, and if you impress Steve Patterson, host of The Debaters, then you could win a big Winnipeg Comedy Festival prize pack. To submit your pun, call our listener line at 204-788-3205 or email it to win@cbc.ca. Tune in to Information Radio for details.
All right, so what is that big prize pack? They're not kidding. It's a pair of tickets to Patterdad. That's Steve's one-person show. There's a pair of tickets to The Debaters, and that's a taping of The Winner's Choice. There's an autographed copy of Steve Patterson's book called Dad Up. There's a bar of Patter soap. Yep, Steve has his own soap. There's merch from The Debaters and the Winnipeg Comedy Festival as well. So this is a big prize pack. So get out those punny jokes, people. And call us 788-3205 or email win@cbc.ca. Next Wednesday, here's how we're going to pick the winner. Well, actually, we're not going to do it at all. Steve's going to do it. He's going to be in Winnipeg. He's going to be with us on the show, and he's going to pick from our short list of winners. So get those puns in, get those jokes in. Call us 788-3205 or win@cbc.ca, and good luck. The following airtime is made available for messages provided by registered political parties as required by the Canada Elections Act.
A lot of us really don't want Pierre Poilievre to win this election. But the more I hear about Mark Carney, the more I worry. He's planning tax cuts for the rich and health care cuts for the rest of us. Here's the thing. We know we can count on the NDP. They've always fought for us, and we need them in Ottawa more than ever. Canada works best when the NDP's there. We just gotta vote for them. Authorized by the registered agent for the New Democratic Party of Canada.
The proceeding was a paid political ad.
They soar among the trees and enrich our Earth. And this Earth Day at Fort White Alive, learn about the birds with CBC. Join us at Fort White Alive's Earth Day celebration, April 27th, for a virtual bird tour. Follow the posted QR codes to learn some amazing bird facts. Fly with Fort White Alive and CBC this Earth Day. Visit cbc.ca/Manitoba/community for more.
Coming up on the program after 8 o'clock, if you've been listening from 6 this morning, then you know that we're talking to voters all over Manitoba today, north, south, east, and west. In lieu of being in a riding in the city of Winnipeg, that's what we've covered the last 3 weeks on location. We thought we'd sort of virtually get around the province this morning. So we have already been to Strathclair, to Morden, to Lac du Bonny, to Austin, to St. Teresa Point First Nation, heard from voters in all of these communities. After 8 o'clock on the show, we're going way north. We're going to Fox Lake First Nation, and we're going to hear from a voter there who says he only voted Liberal once before in his life, as he recalls, when Elijah Harper represented his northern riding back in the 1990s. Other than that, he's voted NDP. But on Monday, he says the NDP have lost his vote, and we're going to find out why. So that is coming up as we hear from a voter from Fox Lake, way up north on the Hudson Bay Rail line after 8. Right now, though, as the trade war between Canada and the United States rages on, visits from Americans are down across the country, but Manitoba appears to be bucking the trends somewhat. Economic Development Winnipeg says there's been a slight increase in American tourists this year. They're focused, though, on keeping those numbers up. Natalie Thiessen is the Vice President of Tourism with Economic Development Winnipeg, and she joins us this morning via Zoom. Hello to you.
Good morning.
So what are the numbers telling us when it comes to Americans visiting Winnipeg?
Yeah, so what we know is that based on recent data for cross-border crossings to Manitoba, just in the first quarter of the year compared to last year, we're up about 9%. And so that's, compared to what we're seeing in terms of trends nationally, national data shows us that there's a bit about a 10% decline. So Manitoba's faring better than other provinces.
Do we know what the number of visits from Americans, how does that compare to last year in our province?
Yeah, so right now, based on the first quarter of the year, we're 9% up compared to last year, the same period.
Okay.
I mean, the other...
That was
the
a silly, I'm just going to interject here because that was a silly question. You just answered it.
Yeah.
Is it normal for us to see increases every year in American tourists, or is this something that we can look at as a trend?
Yeah, I think it's probably still too early to see a trend. I think the other metric that we usually track is also spending from American visitors in our city. And so typically it probably represents about last year 25% of visitor expenditures in Winnipeg. And so right now we're seeing that slight uptick in the first quarter of the year, but still too early to tell if this is going to be a trend for the rest of the year. And also people have planned their vacations in 2024 to come to Winnipeg, to come to Manitoba. They've made those plans ahead of time, and some are sort of pretty big bucket trips if they're going up north, or whether it's for Northern Lights and they're stopping in Winnipeg. And so again, early positive signs, but too soon to tell.
When you look at what you already started to allude to this, but when you look at why we might be seeing this increase, you said some of this is bucket list trips and going up north. You have to make big plans in advance, of course, if you're going all the way to Churchill and such. But what else have you noticed in terms of why people come to Manitoba?
Yeah, I think the other thing too in this specific period, we work a lot with American student tour operators to offer them for educational trips for high school students, and we have a tremendous offering here in Winnipeg from our educational institutions, art galleries, the Canadian Museum for Human Rights, the National Truth Center for Truth and Reconciliation, and so we actually monitored new groups coming from Minnesota, Wisconsin this year that had never been to Winnipeg before. And so that's another indicator. Also the value of the dollar. I think it's may not be the main motivator, but I think whenever there's, a significant decrease in our dollar, that impacts visitation. And then another segment we're following closely is meetings and conferences. So we have a dedicated team that works to attract international conferences to our city. And, even in the last 2 weeks, we've seen sort of a number of requests for proposals from American associations looking to make different choices about where they're bringing their business. And so again, tracking that, we haven't seen the result of that visitation yet, but something we might see in the future.
You were mentioning, earlier, Natalie, that you said the number in terms of what American visitors add to our economy overall. Based on 2024 data, it represents 25% of our visitor economy. Do we know if people spend when they come here?
For sure. And they spend almost 3 to 4 times as much as a regular or a Canadian domestic visitor. And so depending on where they're from, but in terms of, we know when they're coming to Manitoba, when they're coming to Winnipeg, they spend more than the Canadian visitor. And so that's sizable. And that's why, it represents a significant part of our visitor economy. And that's why we're wanting to make sure that we remain welcoming to visitors who want to plan their visits to Manitoba. And I think it's something we asked Winnipeggers in a recent Pro Research survey around, should we continue to welcome American visitors to our city? And a resounding sort of 86% said yes. And so I think that's a really positive signal, because we believe that though amongst all the trade tensions, we are neighbors to them and they want to come experience what our city has to offer. and we want to be able to welcome them with open arms.
So let me ask you about that, because when we were in Morden, I was in a business, and that business owner was in Winkler. This was a business owner in Winkler I was talking to, and they said they're so, closer to the border, they get a ton of Americans that come and for various reasons, shop, spend, but some of them were talking to her about feeling like they may not be welcomed. I understand you're getting calls from Americans who are also thinking of that, wondering if they'll be welcomed. Is that right?
Yeah. We've as soon as sort of the inauguration occurred, we started seeing sort of a few requests directly to our office asking, in terms of they were planning their visits to Winnipeg, and even for summer at this point, they're planning for summer. And given sort of the tensions between our country, would they be welcome? And our answer at that time is that, we want to welcome them to our city. We have lots to offer for them to experience. And, we are known as Friendly Manitoba, and we don't anticipate that changing anytime soon. And I think our research shows that is in fact true.
What's your messages to businesses here, before you leave? As you said, you want to continue with this trend. So what would you like to say to businesses about that?
Yeah, I think to businesses, we've met with a lot of businesses in the sector around sort of the impacts of potential tariffs and, potential fluctuation in visitors. And I think for them to know that we're keeping a close pulse on what's happening to the States and not putting our eggs all in that basket. We're looking at expanding our presence nationally in terms of a domestic Canadian campaign, and also diversification of looking at where is it fit for other international opportunities. And so if there's something that we can support them, that they can please reach out to our office.
All right, Natalie, thank you very much for being with us this morning. I appreciate you walking us through what you know about the latest stats.
Have a great day.
Yeah, you too. That's Natalie Thiessen. She's the Vice President of Tourism with Economic Development, Winnipeg. It is 3 minutes now to 8 o'clock on 89.3 FM, and Heather Wells is here with our Thursday headlines.
Good morning. Well, 4 days left in the federal election campaign, and NDP leader Jagmeet Singh is in Winnipeg today, hoping to shore up support in a traditional stronghold. The party retained its grip on Elmwood-Transcona 7 months ago when Leela Dance won a by-election there. Liberal leader Mark Carney is also in Winnipeg later today. Meanwhile, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre is in Halifax this morning and Saskatoon this afternoon. A northern Manitoba community is celebrating the life of a 2-year-old girl. Josiah Young died in January. Her grandmother is charged with second-degree murder. Over the Easter weekend, Josiah's aunt threw her a birthday party to emphasize the joy she had given to so many. I'll be back with more Manitoba news at 8:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
Welcome.
2 minutes to 8 o'clock. Sunshine is bright out there. It's going to stay with us. A high of 15 degrees in Winnipeg today. And the fog patches, if you are experiencing any of that this morning, should dissipate. It's probably happened already. But call us in the commuter line if you have any problems with fog. The call we did get isn't about fog. Ron called, said the far right lane in the westbound Narran, just after Lage, is blocked by 2 large trucks. So backups are starting to build on Lage Maudière, so keep left to pass. Far right lane on westbound Narran. Lineup starting to build on Narran. So call us if that situation changes or if you have something else to pass along, and we will pass it along here on air. I'm Marcy Marcusa. The last few weeks we have been out in different ridings. Today we're taking you virtually out all over the province, north, south, east, and west. And next, after 8 o'clock, we're going to go way north, up to Fox Lake First Nation. We're going to hear from a voter there. He says the NDP have lost his vote. He says the North needs someone at the decision-making table, and their support, in his view, is dwindling. He's worried they're not going to form an official party. So who will this Fox Laker vote for? We're going to take you live to northern Manitoba, and we'll find out after 8. Stay with us. This is CBC's Information Radio, 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and on YouTube. World Report, the latest in national and international news, is next.
On Cue with Tom Power. Who do you not notice? In the new season of his show Late Bloomer, Jasmeet Reina wants to shed light on stories that haven't been told, including the lives of food delivery drivers on bikes. He'll be here to tell you about the new season and what happens when we start paying attention.
I'm just really scared.
What do you mean? Scared about what?
Everything.
That's coming up on Cue, followed by Commotion with Elamine Abdel Mahmoud on CBC Radio 1, the CBC Listen app, and everywhere you get your podcasts.
The CBC News is next. Coming up in half an hour, it's The Current with Matt Galloway.
We've been traveling across Canada this election campaign, asking Canadians who they're voting for and why. Today, we will hear from people in the territories about the key issues there at a time when northern security is in focus. That's coming up on The Current.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. U.S. President Donald Trump is reinserting himself into Canadian politics.
I have to be honest, as a state, it works great. As a nation, 95% of Canada, what they do is they buy from us and they sell to us. If they didn't have us, and if we didn't spend that money, as Trudeau told me, they would cease to exist.
Last night in the White House, Trump hinted to reporters he was considering raising auto tariffs in Canada once again. It is making waves on the campaign trail, including in Surrey, BC. Liberal leader Mark Carney is telling voters he is the best leader to stand up to Trump. The CBC's Tom Perry was at his rally last night.
Who is ready? Who is ready to stand up for Canada with me?
Mark Carney in Surrey, BC, on a day when Donald Trump barged back into Canadian politics. The U.S. president repeating his false claims about the U.S. subsidizing its northern neighbor and his wish that Canada become America's 51st state.
As he made clear once again today in the Oval Office, President Trump, he is trying to break us so that America can own us.
Trump had, for the most part, gone quiet on Canada, but his latest meanderings could fuel the Liberals in the final days of this election. Carney is in BC, looking to win ridings held by Conservatives and New Democrats, but his attacks have focused exclusively on Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre, who Carney says is the wrong person to take on the U.S. president.
It's not Pierre Poilievre. No. It's not Pierre Poilievre who draws his inspiration from President Trump, who copies his ideas.
A U.S. president known for sowing chaos, injecting another dose of disruption into this campaign. Tom Perry, CBC News, Surrey, BC.
Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre says Trump's auto tariffs are not the only thing hurting the auto sector. He says the Liberals' zero-emissions vehicle mandate is also a problem. It requires 50% of new light-duty vehicles to be zero-emission vehicles by 2030.
Canadian workers in places like Oshawa and Windsor face losing their jobs just to justify the ideological fantasies of out-of-touch bankers and liberal ideologues. People who spend too much of their adult life outside of Canada, disconnected from the reality of Canadian life.
Poilievre was speaking this morning in Halifax. NDP leader Jagmeet Singh is starting his day in Winnipeg. He spoke to reporters shortly after Trump publicly mused about new auto tariffs.
These tariffs will make it impossible, I think, for a lot of these companies to continue. It is a devastating blow to have increased tariffs on our automobile sector. And that's why I think what we need to do is to say, if you want to have access to our market, you need to have a presence in our country. That means jobs in our country.
We're also watching Montreal this morning. Bloc leader Yves-François Blanchet will speak to reporters at the Bombardier office there. Montreal is also where Green Party co-leader Jonathan Pedneau is campaigning today. President Donald Trump's campaign to deport millions of undocumented immigrants is raising questions about Canada's safe third country agreement with the United States. Under the agreement, Canada can reject almost all asylum claims from people coming from the U.S. But as the CBC's Jorge Barrera found out, one family's ordeal is calling into question whether the U.S. really is a safe country for immigrants.
Araceli says she and her husband would wait to cry until their daughters fell asleep. She says the girls are 4 and 14 years old and gave them the strength to get through the 2 weeks they spent locked inside a windowless jail cell in late March at the U.S. port of entry in Niagara Falls, New York. CBC News is identifying Araceli by first name only for her safety. Araceli, who has 2 brothers living in Canada, and her family were trying to flee the Trump administration's crackdown on undocumented immigrants, but they were turned back at the Canadian border over small naming differences in her and her brother's birth certificates. And they're not alone, says this advocate.
In one case, a group of 40, in another case, a group of 80 reportedly.
Jennifer Connor is with the Buffalo, New York group Justice for Migrant Families. She says others have also been held for days and weeks inside ports of entry in Detroit, Buffalo, and Champlain, New York, something that never happened before along the northern border.
I don't think it's something that Canada should be complicit in.
Heather Neufeld, an Ottawa lawyer, has filed a federal court appeal to overturn Canada Border Services Agency's rejection of Araceli's claim.
Having a brother who is a Canadian citizen, Araceli qualifies to seek asylum in Canada.
Araceli's husband is now in a U.S. detention center, awaiting a May hearing on his fate, while she and her daughters remain free in Buffalo, with a hearing date set in December. Living with fear, she could be scooped up and deported to El Salvador at any moment. Jorge Barrera, CBC News, Buffalo, New York.
An early morning shooting at Pearson International is causing flight delays and traffic chaos. Police confirm it was an officer-involved shooting. One man was shot. The officer is not injured. It happened at Terminal 1, which is now experiencing delays. Ontario's Special Investigation Unit has been called to investigate. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is cutting short his official trip to South Africa following a Russian attack on Kyiv. At least 9 people were killed in the overnight assault. Dozens more are injured or missing. Crystal Gomansing has the latest.
Loud explosions and fireballs in Kyiv. Ukrainian military units intercepted many incoming drones and missile strikes overnight, but not all of them. There was a quick and sudden explosion and the ceiling started to come down, says Natalia Erestova. President Volodymyr Zelensky says Russia hit Ukraine with nearly 70 missiles and roughly 150 drones. Hours earlier, U.S. President Donald Trump told reporters in the Oval Office Russia is ready to make a deal and called out the Ukrainian leader.
I thought it might be easier to deal with Zelensky. So far, it's been harder.
Russia accuses Zelensky of standing in the way of diplomacy. According to the Kremlin's foreign ministry spokesperson, Zelensky lacks capacity to negotiate a deal to end the war. Ukraine refuses to concede illegally annexed territory to Moscow.
There's been a lot of talking between Trump's envoy and the Russians.
Fiona Hill was an advisor to President Trump during his first administration.
Unfortunately, an awful lot of people know how to play Trump.
Zelensky, who is currently in South Africa gathering support for his peace plan, says he'll return home immediately and is calling for more air defense support from allies. Crystal Gomansing, CBC News, London.
India's Prime Minister is vowing revenge on those who carried out Tuesday's attack in Kashmir. Narendra Modi says they will be punished, quote, beyond their imagination.
India will identify, track and punish every terrorist. We will pursue them to the ends of the earth. India's spirit will never be broken by terrorism.
The attack killed 26 tourists. Pakistan is denying any involvement, but India has closed its main border with that country. It has also expelled some of Pakistan's military diplomats and suspended a water-sharing treaty. Pakistan says any attempt to stop the flow of water will be considered an act of war. Islamabad is also suspending all trade with India. Cardinals at the Vatican are preparing for the upcoming conclave. They prayed this morning ahead of a series of meetings. There is a lot of work to be done before a new pope is selected. And in St. Peter's Square, there are thousands of people who still want to say a final farewell to Pope Francis. Megan Williams has the latest.
The doors to St. Peter's Basilica reopened this morning to welcome thousands of mourners paying final respects to Pope Francis. Some 50,000 people have passed by his open coffin since Wednesday morning, when it was carried in a procession from his guest house inside the Vatican to the Basilica.
I'm here because it's a historical moment in time, and I want to be part of this, and it means a lot to me to be here.
Says this Torontonian who now lives in Rome. Because of the high numbers, the Vatican decided to keep St. Peter's open through the night. Francis's coffin will be closed in a ceremony Friday evening. On Saturday, more than 170 delegates, including world leaders, are expected to attend the funeral in St. Peter's Square, with millions watching around the globe. Megan Williams, CBC News, the Vatican.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. I'm Marcia Young.
Good morning, Manitoba. I'm Marcy Marcusa, and welcome to a special edition of Information Radio on CBC, 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and YouTube. The last couple of weeks, we have been in different ridings in Winnipeg to talk to voters and hear from candidates. Today, we're going all over the province, north, south, east, and west, to hear from voters 4 days to Election Day.
For me, I think this is the very first election where I really thought about what I needed to vote for. You know, this whole Trump and him trying to take over Canada, plays an important role in my decision.
I'm proud to be Manitoban because we're conservative at our roots, all of us, I think, or most of us, but we are progressive, right? And we want to see progressive policies and uphold human rights.
I have voted conservative, I think, in the last election here. And this time, I want to know the candidates. I want to know, are they connected to my community or not?
This half hour, our final voter weighs in. So if you have been with us from early this morning, we've been to Strathclyde, Lac du Bonny, St. Teresa Point First Nation. We've been to Morden, to Austin. And this half hour, we're taking you way up north. We are going to hear from a voter who says he only voted Liberal once, maybe twice before. He voted when Elijah Harper represented his northern riding in the 90s. Other than that, he has voted NDP, but he's going to change his vote. And we're going to find out why. He is in Fox Lake First Nation. Stay tuned for that interview. Right now, it is time to touch base with Heather Welsh. She's live in our news center with headlines.
Good morning. Well, as Election Day approaches, just 4 days left in this campaign, shelters across the country are working to get the message out. That's because voters who are homeless often face barriers to voting. We're going to hear from a Winnipeg shelter coming up. And a provincial pot of money set aside to subsidize flights from Winnipeg to 2 U.S. cities has run out of cash. The former PC government created a nearly $5 million fund to get WestJet flights direct from Richardson International to Los Angeles and Atlanta. The Canoe government says the money has been used and it has no plans to add more. I'll be back with more Manitoba News at 8:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Well, you know what I did this morning, Corey? I completely misspoke. And everyone's probably screaming from Austin, Manitoba. I said Austin's between Portage and Brandon.
Yeah.
And I think I said on the air, I
think you said between Portage and Winnipeg.
Yes. Clearly not. Clearly not. At any rate, sorry, everyone, just a misspeak there. You have, speaking of traveling, you have details on the morning commute.
Yes, we got a call on the commuter line about two kind of big trucks that are blocking the far right lane, westbound Nairn, just past La Jamodière. So keep an eye out for that. Last heard that it's starting to cause some backups there. Other than that, though, things seem to be running fairly smoothly out there on the roads. But if you're walking, biking, driving, you see something going on, do give me a call on the CBC commuter line. That number, 204-788-3093.
In Brandon, mainly sunny, 0. Up in Thompson this morning, it is mostly cloudy. It is 1 degree. And in Winnipeg, the current temperature is 3. Today, we're going to be sunny for most of the day, and it should be lovely because our high is 15. Well, as I mentioned, our next voter lives in the heart of hydro country, where massive towers cut lines through boreal forest everywhere. In just 70 kilometers, there are 4 huge dams and 3 converter stations. We are talking about Fox Lake First Nation, 762 kilometers northeast of Winnipeg between Thompson and Churchill on the Hudson Bay Railway line. There are about 1,700 people who are officially Fox Lakers. I met some of them on our CBC Communities in Focus trip, got up that way to visit some of the people. This is the riding of Churchill Kiiwetinoong Aski. Nikki Ashton's the NDP incumbent. She first won in 2008. Liberal Rebecca Chartrand is running, Conservative Lachlan Donardi, and Dylan Young for the PPC. Conway Arthurson is a negotiator and advisor to the local band council, but he's also a voter. He's a new grandpa, and he's worried about the future. He joins us via Zoom to talk about what he's thinking about ahead of Election Day. Hi, Conway.
Good morning, Marcia.
Nice to see you.
You too.
So tell me a little bit about what you're thinking heading into Monday and what's been concerning you.
Well, I've been losing sleep over this election, and that doesn't normally happen to me. The threat of, Trump wanting to annex Canada is something that's taken very seriously up here. And I believe that, voting Liberal, I think, is probably the best thing for us to do at this time with Carney as the leader. I believe he has the experience, education, expertise to deal with Trump in a good way. So, that's one of the decisions of why I'm going to be voting Liberal this time around.
And this is a change for you. Why not? You've supported the NDP for most of your life, in fact. Why not the NDP right now?
Yeah, like you say, I voted the NDP all my life. I voted twice for the Liberals in the past, and that's when Elijah Harper ran and Tina Keeper. But we need to have we need to be realistic in terms of what's out there and what's real. And my understanding is the NDP may not even have party status this time around, and we need somebody sitting at the table representing us where they make the decisions. And I don't think the NDP is going to be sitting at that table this time around.
How has how you think about this vote changed beyond the issues? I know that you'd mentioned off air to me that you always came to things first thinking about, and I believe your wording was Indigenous rights, but this has slightly changed this year. Tell me a little bit about how your perspectives changed.
Yeah, for me, I'm always trying to protect our rights and interests, and I've been up against, big industry and governments in the past. And, this time around, it's a little bit different because, there's threats of our country being taken over by Canada. And the Conservatives, I'm hearing that, they want to use the notwithstanding clause for the Charter of Rights, which means our rights will be trampled on. And, we have a history of, dealing with the Conservatives that way in terms of them railroading us and trampling on our rights, thinking that, they can do what they want. And my understanding is, they want to open up the North for critical minerals, and they're not going to do it in a way we feel that they should do it in terms of, being respectful and strategic and in partnership with First Nations in the North. And I think the Liberals probably have a better chance of doing that than the Conservatives. So that's why I'm voting Liberal this time around.
Let me look at some of the things that the parties have said, because the Conservatives had said they would incentivize First Nation to support resource development projects through industry taxes. And also they say that their plans wouldn't preclude communities from following existing impact benefit agreements. How does that sit with you?
Yeah, I've dealt with Conservatives governments in the past, and, their bottom line and our bottom line are always going to clash. And, when they talk about those taxes, it comes at a cost, and my community in Fox Lake, have decades of history regarding big development and social impacts. So we know, who's looking out for our best interests and who's just after the resources. And we understand that, that Conservatives are wanting the resources. And I'm going to suspect that they would trample on our treaty and Indigenous rights to get to those resources, and that's what I'm afraid of.
Why do you trust the Liberals with fiscal reconciliation, if you will, given that they've had 10 years in power and you have still been fighting for these things?
Well, being selfish right now in terms of what I'm going to say is, Fox Lake was knocking at government's door to deal with some of the impacts of the past, and we've only been at the table since 2019 with this Liberal government. We made progress. Unfortunately, there were a couple of elections in between where the caretaker period took over and we weren't able to have a discussion. When we're in that same situation right now, we have an active negotiating table with the federal government, and we're making good progress with them. The negotiators on the federal team and us, built a good rapport and a relationship, and we're making progress on that. And I don't see that happening with the Conservatives. They basically feel that our rights and interests are not as important as anybody else's, and that's where I draw the line in the sand with me regarding the difference between Conservatives and Liberals. And I think the Liberals are gonna keep moving forward in a good way. We've been able to make progress on them. But yeah, go ahead.
I was going to interject because I want to ask you about two things specifically, because it's unique to talk to you because you're right in the middle of a few things that keep coming up and at the debate stage and in the different party policy platforms. So one is an east-west power grid. This would be, Manitoba's power being exported east-west if that's built. You're right in the middle of hydro development, always up there. How would Fox Lake be affected should that actually be something that moves forward?
Yeah, we understand that, any east-west grid will be coming through our ancestral lands and traditional territory. And, we want to be a part of that development. We want to be at that table. We want to be able to, succeed the way, everybody else should succeed in something like that. We're not anti-development, but we need to make sure that our rights and interests are protected. And, we're open for business. We've got an MOU signed with a group called Nistanan regarding that east-west corridor. We've also heard about, Churchill and the rail line being enhanced, which is another good thing.
Yeah, maybe a second port as well on Hudson Bay, right? Is being floated at least by the Premier, yeah.
Yeah, and that one, what I understand, would be privately owned by First Nations and other groups. So, that's the big difference between the Churchill port and the Nistanan port, is that one would probably be supported by government and ours would be supported privately. But again, we've only signed a memorandum of understanding for the feasibility study of that. We never agreed to any kind of development, but, we're looking at, sitting down to see what the options are.
On a personal level, before you go, Conway, I almentioned that you're a new grandpa, I think 3 months in, or Papa, I think is what you get called. Is that right?
Yes,
okay.
Papa.
You always see people smile when you mention their grandkids. How's that changed what you're thinking about as you vote, your view of the vote?
It brought a new perspective to me. I never really thought about, having a young grandchild until recently. And, he needs to have a future that's better than, what I lived and what his mom is going to live. And, that's always been my goal, in life, is, to provide a better life for my daughter and to provide a better life for my grandson. And, having these discussions with the East-West corridor, even the transmission line up to Nunavut is being discussed and it's coming to our territory. Those things are going to, set us up, for a half-decent future for our kids. And, that's always something that, I felt that was very important, is, we always do something for the future and to make sure that, their life is a lot easier than ours is. So that's where my mindset is regarding my grandson. He's got a whole life to live. He's 3 months old, and that, we need to make sure his future and his life, is better than ours. And I can see that happening with, some of these developments coming and the partnerships and businesses that will come as a result of that. And, we should be in a better shape at the end of the day regarding that.
Just last, what's your sense of your riding in terms of when you hear the buzz around, Nikki Ashton and the NDP have held that riding for a long time. Is there a lot of activity, a lot of signs up your way, for example, for all the different parties?
I've never really noticed a lot of signs. It's typical of, the folks putting up NDP signs and some Liberal signs. I don't go around town, seeing who's supporting who. But, this is, from what I understand through Facebook and chatting with other people, it's a very, tense election right now up here. They're neck and neck. It's basically a coin flip right now. We're not too sure, who's going to win. But I think whoever shows up to the polls and actually casts their ballot is gonna determine who the winner is, and that's very important. We get the young people out to vote.
Yeah, well, the Monday is on Monday. We'll find out. Certainly, all 14 ridings we'll be watching because, well, that's Manitoba. Thank you very much, Conway. Really nice to have you via Zoom.
Thank you, Marcia. Be safe.
That's Conway Arthurson, a voter in Fox Lake First Nation. His riding is Churchill, Kiiwetinoong, Aski. It is 8:24 a.m.
Public service announcements. PSAs have to work twice as hard as regular commercials to get noticed. So ad agencies use techniques like nostalgia, an emotional connection, and celebrities.
This is Elvis Presley. Thousands who know the fight against polio is just as tough as it ever was.
The power of PSAs on Under the Influence with Terry O'Reilly. Thursday morning at 11:30, 3:30 p.m. in Newfoundland. And on demand on CBC Listen.
8:25 is the time right now. Thursday morning and a beauty of a day on the way. Sunshine and a high of 15 degrees. We're just at 1. We're not climbing fast, but we'll get there. We also are looking forward to a gorgeous weekend. So Friday through Sunday, by Sunday, our high in Winnipeg could be 21 degrees. And a lot of this extends across the south. Brandon's looking for a high of 20 on Sunday, possible for you. And even up in Thompson, not so much Sunday. It might rain up in Thompson for you, but if the forecast holds on Saturday, you could see a high of 18 degrees. So we're all going to be going, spring. It is time for a bit of music before the news this morning. Mark this one down as a musical collaboration that I would say that a lot of people might not have expected. I'm talking pop rebel Billy Idol, who's teamed up with Canada's Avril Lavigne for a rockin' new number. It's called 77.
No, it's not a fair fight, it never is. But you gotta swing first and you better not miss. She said she don't wanna run anymore, don't care about going to heaven. She said, do it like we did it before, fight back like 77. Hey, 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 fight back like 77. Hey, 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 fight back like 77. Our lives in their hands. Same old thing, it's always been. Sometimes we lose, sometimes we win. They show their teeth, we kick them in. She said she don't wanna run anymore, don't care about going to heaven. She said, do it like we did it before, fight back like 77. Hey, 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 fight back like 77.
Billy Idol, Avril Lavigne was 77, maybe nodding to the fact that Billy Idol is now in his 70s. He sounds great still. He's having a bit of a moment, though. He's showing up on all these funny ads, too. Have you seen him on TV in some of these ads? There's one where he's chasing people in a golf cart. Yeah, very funny. He just released a single from Idol's album. Pardon me, this is what we were hearing to is a just-released single from his album called Dream Into It. It's out tomorrow, April 25th. And just because we heard her laughing, let's go to Marge, who's in studio. Marjorie Dalhouse here to tell us what's happening on Radio Noon's Colin.
Well, we are talking about we're heading here towards the final days before the federal election, and you may be getting bombarded with a lot of ads and a lot of things on your social media feed. But how can you tell what's real and what's fake, right? With the advancements in AI and bots out there, there are some people who are not being able to tell the difference between what's a real story, what's a fake news story, what's a AI deep fake. So today we're talking to a digital media literacy expert about how you can spot the difference before what you're going to be seeing on all your social media feeds. So we're asking you, have you fallen victim, and how did you end up telling between what's real and what's fake? So call in this afternoon after 12:30.
All right, thank you, Marge.
Thanks, Marcy.
That's Marjorie Dalhouse talking about what's coming up on the call-in between 12:30 and 1, and you can leave a message as well if you can't make it live, 788-3797. My name is Marcy Marcusa with our team here at Information Radio. Thank you so much for being part of the show this morning. Our live team, Megan Ketchison, as well as Aaron Broman and Heather Wells, who are about to hear from in the news. Also, big thanks to those who worked on the program this morning, Corey Funk and Abby Adeyemi and Brad Lillies. That's our wonderful live team on the show. Also, big thanks to associate producer Chide Akuma, who worked on one of our items in the program as well. I just want to make sure I didn't miss anyone here. The senior producer of audio at CBC Manitoba is Leif Larson, and the producer of shows in CA Current Affairs is Nellie Gonzalez. So big thanks to everyone. It is time now for your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 8:30, it's sunny. It's beautiful. 3 degrees right now. A high this afternoon of 15. A housing expert in Winnipeg says the conversation on housing in this federal election must include social housing. Shauna McKinnon is chair of the Urban and Inner City Studies Department at the University of Winnipeg. She's also a member of the Right to Housing Coalition. McKinnon says they're calling on the next federal government to build at least 50,000 subsidized rent-geared to income units each year for the next decade.
Housing has been built. It's just not the housing that is addressing the needs of the lowest income households. So we really need to shift the investment to ensure that that is the priority housing.
McKinnon says details on social housing in the major party platforms has been missing. Elections Canada wants to make sure everyone can have their say on Election Day, and that includes the unhoused. People with no place to live face a lot of barriers when they try to vote, like transportation, access to party platforms, and a lack of ID. Margot Ross at Siloam Mission says Elections Canada gave them confirmation letters so staff can prove the identity of the people who use their services, allowing them to vote.
Our housing prevention workers work really hard as a first step to get identification for folks, but some just don't have it. So this letter makes a huge difference in giving folks the opportunity to go out and cast a ballot.
Ross helped people vote in the 2023 provincial election. She says helping them participate gave them a sense of pride. NDP leader Jagmeet Singh is in Winnipeg today, hoping to shore up support in a traditional stronghold. The party retained its grip on Elmwood-Transcona 7 months ago when Leela Dance won the by-election by just under 1,200 votes. National polls suggest NDP support might be eroding. Dance says she's giving this campaign her all.
I'm worried about getting enough sleep at night. That's the reality. But I'm just pushing it for the next 5 days and getting back to doing what I'm doing, casework and helping people. Like the amount of people that are still lining up in my office as a member of parliament to help them is the reason why I'm doing this.
After addressing party faithful at a rally last night, Singh is scheduled to be back in the riding for a campaign announcement this morning. Liberal leader Mark Carney also in Winnipeg later today, and Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre is in Halifax this morning before flying to Saskatoon. A northern Manitoba community is celebrating the life of a 2-year-old girl. Josiah Young died in January. Her grandmother is charged with second-degree murder. CBC I-Team's Caroline Bargout traveled to Bloodvein First Nation.
Josiah Young would have turned 3 on Easter Sunday. Even though she wasn't here to celebrate, many in her community of Bloodvein First Nation gathered to remember her. They sang to her, shared a birthday cake, and honored her short life. Chief Lisa Young was there.
Because we knew that she wasn't going to be here to celebrate it, we wanted to celebrate it for her.
Josiah's aunt, Roberta Goosehead, organized the event. She had been the toddler's caregiver since Josiah's mom was arrested in December 2023, but she struggled to find someone to look after Josiah while she was at work. Last October, she left her with her maternal grandmother. That woman, Burma Sky, is now charged with second-degree murder in the girl's death.
You know, if she was struggling to keep her, she should have contacted me and I would have went to pick her up.
She made T-shirts with Josiah's picture on them.
Are you guys ready?
And led the community to release 200 balloons in her honor, sending their love to the little girl who brought joy to so many. Caroline Bargout, CBC News, Bloodvein First Nation.
An early morning shooting at Toronto's Pearson International Airport is causing flight delays and traffic problems. Police confirm one man has been shot in what is being called an officer-involved shooting. The officer was not injured. It happened at Terminal 1, which now is experiencing delays. Ontario's Special Investigations Unit has been called in to investigate. If you're traveling to Pearson, you may want to call ahead or check the website before heading out to the airport. A provincial pot of money set aside to subsidize flights from Winnipeg to 2 U.S. cities has run out of money. As CBC's Bartley Kivas reports, it raises questions about the future of WestJet flights from Richardson International to Los Angeles and Atlanta.
The former PC government created a nearly $5 million fund to subsidize WestJet flights from Winnipeg to LA and Atlanta. The Canoe government says the money has run out and it has no plans to set aside more cash for flight subsidies. The future of these routes is now in question. Trade tensions and anti-U.S. sentiment have reduced the demand for travel to the U.S. WestJet says it's reviewing a number of transborder flights. Earlier this week, it announced more flights between Winnipeg and Halifax and new connections between Winnipeg and St. John's, both to capitalize on increasing interest in domestic travel and connections to Europe. Bartley Kivas, CBC News, Winnipeg.
You can stay in step with the news throughout the day. All you have to do is head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Go Jets, go!
Oh, yeah.
Woohoo! Staying up late.
You know, I think we're just going to have to plow through.
We can do it.
I think so.
Thanks, Heather.
Because if we try to go to bed, I mean, really, would we sleep anyway? We'd be so anxious.
I'd probably sleep still.
I don't think I could.
Morning show host insider information. I'm just always tired at a certain level, so...
I hear that.
Talk to you tomorrow.
Okay.
Heather and I wearing white, getting ready to watch the Jets tonight. Puck drop 8:30. Sunny, 1 degree in Winnipeg as we leave you. A high of 15. Corey Funk is in.
Might still be a couple of trucks on westbound Nairn just past Lajamodier in the far right lane, causing some backups.
Okay, so beware of that, and thank you for the morning. Thanks everyone for listening, and big thanks to our guests this morning. Most of them were voters who joined us from all over Manitoba, and we're grateful for their thoughts and their time. We're getting close now to Election Day, and we'll talk to you again tomorrow, Friday morning, for another edition of CBC's Information Radio on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on that app and YouTube. Take care, be well. The Current's coming up next.